Hello everyone and welcome to this session of understanding manual mode and stops. I'm Rohan and here I have with me Abhishek, my colleague from the Nikon India technical team. Hi Abhishek.
Hello Rohan.
So Abhishek, here we are today to help our viewers understand manual mode and how to shoot in stops. How do you think we can demonstrate this for them in an easily understandable way?
Rohan, see, first of all, I would like to mention to all our viewers that most of them who have just bought their DSLR are either shooting in auto mode or P mode.
Correct.
We just want them to get out of these modes and try a few more options, because these modes kind of disable most of the options and features in your camera, so you have less control over your images, wherein shooting in manual mode give you lot many control over your image in terms of setting the right exposures, and there are some more features that can be adjusted in manual mode, which probably auto mode does not deliver. First of all, it is very important to understand what are stops.
Yes Abhishek, because I'm sure each one of us has gone through that initial dilemma of and confusion about stops.
Right.
Because anybody who's starting photography or is new to DSLR photography will obviously have this little apprehension about stops.
Right.
And understanding how they work.
Yeah. So our intention here is once you understand stops, it becomes very easy for anybody who has a DSLR to shoot in manual mode. So what we'll be doing is right now we'll conduct a small demonstration, and through that demonstration we'll try and explain what are stops, and then we'll jump on to how to shoot in manual mode. So shall we execute the demonstration?
Yes Abhishek, let's go ahead.
Let's go.
So to illustrate how to use stops, we have this beautiful painting as a prop. We have a D810 camera mounted with a 24-70 lens, and my colleague Abhishek here will help us understand how we can use stops to improve our photography.
So Rohan, to explain stops, it is very important to understand something which is visible in the viewfinder, and there on the screen what we have done is we have hooked D810 with the LCD screen there, so that our viewers can get a very clear view of what we are doing inside the camera. Now you can see the meter there, which we also call the meter scale, with plus and minus sign on it and 0 right on the center.
Correct.
So right now, as per the prevailing lighting condition, we have set our camera right with 1/15th second of a shutter speed and f3.5 as aperture. There are two ways to understand stops. One, when aperture is on priority, that is you want shallow depth of field or you want greater depth of field. Second is when you want to freeze motion, you need to play around with shutter speed, or you want to show motion, you need to play around with shutter speed. So that is another way of understanding stops. So let's take the first case wherein aperture is on priority and when you want to play around with the depth of field. So right now, as per the lighting condition, the aperture that we have set is f3.5. Let's say we want little more depth in our shot, so we increase the f number, say 5. Okay. Now when we do that and we fix the shutter speed, and the shutter speed remains the same at 1/15th of a second, what you see in the meter scale is it's going towards the negative side.
Yes, it has moved a little towards
Exactly.
negative. So whenever the camera is either going one stop above or one stop towards the negative, what is actually happening is, if we say that the camera is overexposing one stop, it is actually allowing double the light to enter the camera.
Twice the light is
Twice the
entering
light
the camera.
to enter the camera. And each time we bring the stop down or towards the negative side, it halves the light that enters the camera. So it is just easier this way for everyone to remember and to use when they're actually practically taking pictures. Why don't we demonstrate taking a few pictures, Abhishek, and for our viewers, so that subject becomes a little more clearer for their understanding.
So what we are doing right here is right now we are focusing on this subject, and as you can see, it's one stop underexposed. So let's take the image and see how it comes. So this is what you get. Technically this is one stop underexposed. So to get it right, what we need to do is we need to bring the exposure meter back to 0. It's not very easy to understand stops, so you can remember it in this way, that when you rotate the dial, 3 clicks means one full stop, 1 click means third stop. So what I'll do is I'll rotate the dial 3 stops, because you can see it's one full stop, so I'll have to rotate the dial 3 times to bring it back to 0. So I'll widen the aperture, that is I'll lower down the f number, and this is 2/3 stop, 1/3 stop and
one full stop.
One full stop. Now what if you want to stick to a particular aperture, say f5? So like f5 is there and you want to stick to f5 because you want, say, certain amount of depth in your shot, and to do that you have two legs of exposure to get it right, to bring the exposure back to zero. One is adjusting the shutter speed, another is ISO. ISO we will take on later. Let's see how you can do is by altering the shutter speed. So I'll rotate it 1/3 stop, 2/3 and 1 full stop. So at 1/8 of a second at f5 it is giving me a proper exposure. Let's say now we want to increase the shutter speed to 1/50th of a second and we have kept f value of f4. Now at this particular camera setting and in the prevailing lighting condition, camera is giving us 2 stops underexposed. So how to correct that? In order to do that, the leg that you need to adjust in the exposure triangle is aperture. So let's widen up the aperture first and see how much light our camera can gather. So since this is 24-70 mm lens, the widest aperture it can support is 2.8. So I'll just drop down the f number to 2.8, and still you can see at 1/50th of a second and f 2.8 it's giving me 1 stop underexposed. Now to correct that, we have another and the last leg of exposure triangle, which is called ISO. ISO also plays a very vital role in getting the right exposure. So what we need to do is we need to change the ISO approximately 3 times. So right now it's 100, so we'll change it 1 click, that is 1/125, which is giving us 2/3 stops, then 1/3 stop at 160 and 200.
That's 1 full stop.
1 full stop. So 100 to 200 is 1 full stop when it comes to ISO. So by changing the ISO and keeping the shutter speed steady without changing the shutter speed, and by widening up the aperture to 2.8, we can get the exposure right, bang on to 0.
So just to rephrase for all our viewers, whatever parameter of the exposure triangle is on priority, keeping that constant, we have the other two to manage or to make our exposure right as per the prevailing or whichever lighting conditions our viewers will be while they're shooting in a more real life scenario.
Exactly. So let's take an image in this particular setting and see how it comes. So technically this is what we call proper exposure, and I hope you must have understood how stops work. Similarly, what we explained to you was mainly towards underexposed image. The same thing can be implemented when you talk about 1 stop over or 2 stop over exposed images.
So I'm sure each one of us has understood how to use stops. Like Abhishek said, you do not really have to remember what shutter speed, what aperture or what ISO you were at. It's just while rotating the dial, each time you hear a click, each click increases or decreases the exposure by 1/3 a stop. 1 click, 1/3 stop, 2nd click, 2/3, and 3 clicks make it 1 stop. So anytime anybody tells you that you have to go increase it by a stop or decrease the exposure by a stop, all you have to remember is move the dial 3 times. So I'm sure each one of us has got the concept of stops. Now to understand this better and taking it one step forward, let's go and understand how to shoot in manual modes.
Now you understood how stops work. Let us demonstrate how you can shoot in manual mode considering all the stops in mind. To do that, we have Tridisha with us and she'll be helping us in demonstrating how to shoot in manual mode. And Rohan will of course take the pictures in various exposure settings. So Rohan, let us take one shot with 1 full stop underexposed and see the outcome, how it comes. As you can see, the whole situation is brightly lit. Tridisha is wearing white dress and we have a background which is equally white. So this whole environment is pretty bright for the camera.
Yes, white anyways as a color reflects back a lot of light towards the camera.
So right now our camera is set as per the lighting condition, and now Rohan is going to take one image with 1 full stop underexposed.
Okay.
So here
3 clicks like we said in our...
Yeah, 3 clicks, that means we are going 1 stop underexposed, wherein the shutter speed is 1/125 and f 2.8. So let's see the result.
Yes. So Disha. Very nice.
So as you can see from the image, it's 1 full stop underexposed and white is almost appearing like grey.
Yes, because see, the cameras are anyways tuned to look for 18% gray,
Right.
as that's how the camera meter works. So as we clicked one stop under, we saw that the picture is slightly underexposed. Now let us try what happens if we take an overexposed picture.
Right.
So again,
So Rohan is slowing down the shutter speed to do that, and we are now one full stop overexposed with the shutter speed of 1/30th of a second.
so let's try a shot and see how what are the results. And to Pradesha.
Now as you can see from the image, details from the brighter section of the image, especially the dress Tridisha is wearing, the details are all gone and washed out, and skin is reflecting a lot of light, and this is what we technically call an overexposed shot. Now to correct it, what we need to do is remember those 3 clicks. So as the shot is one stop overexposed, now again we'll alter the shutter speed and bring the meter back to 0 to get technically well exposed shot. So let's take a shot in this lighting condition.
Can we even have good details in the hair, even in the dress that Tridisha is wearing? When you bring down the meter to 0 on the scale, that is what, according to the prevailing lighting, is the correct exposure. So that pretty much sums it up how we can use stops. So let's go ahead and talk a little more about exposure metering in our next section.
Exactly. Exposure metering is one step ahead. When you are shooting in manual mode, it is very important to understand exposure metering, and that you will be seeing in our next episode. Yes, Ron. Now I think our DSLR users will be much more confident in using manual mode to have greater control over their images, and will get out of that auto mode. And I think these tips were really valuable, and this is it for this episode, and we'll be back with much more exciting episode. Until next time, these are your Nikon buddies Abhishek and Rohan signing off. Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Understanding Exposure Metering. I am Abhishek and I have with me my colleague Rohan from Nikon India technical team. Hi Rohan.
Abhishek.
Hi. We will be talking about understanding exposure metering here, how exposure metering works in your camera. So it is very important for all our viewers to visit our previous episode on how to shoot in manual mode and understanding stops. Right Rohan?
Correct. Exposure metering deals with how the camera perceives light. To understand this better, like Abhishek said, you must visit our previous episode. In this episode, Abhishek, we'll be helping our users understand, how does the camera exposure meter work? How does it perceive light in different lighting conditions? To understand this better, we've planned a little demonstration. Why not we go ahead and conduct this demonstration, and then we can discuss while the demonstration how the exposure meter works and help our users implement all those learnings in their photography to get better exposures and better images.
So here we are to demonstrate how exposure metering works inside the camera. Now whether you are shooting in P mode, S mode or A mode, it is very important for you to understand how exposure meter works inside your camera, especially if you intend to shoot in manual mode.
We have the lovely Tridisha with us once more, and Tridisha is helping us demonstrate exposure metering. What we are essentially doing here is understanding how the camera perceives light. Like we already mentioned, if the scene is completely filled with white, there's too much light being reflected back to the camera. In this situation here, we have Tridisha wearing white dress, there's a white background, so the camera is receiving a lot of light being reflected back from the white.
Right.
Exposure meter inside is telling the camera that there is too much light, so it wants the camera to underexpose a little bit.
Exactly.
So, but what we've done as of now is, we've done the settings on our camera so that we get the scale narrowed down to 0.
So the shutter speed that we are having is 1/50th of a second with aperture 2.8 and ISO 250.
Correct. So at these settings, this is what in the prevalent light the camera meter says is the best settings to get a portrait.
Right.
So let's just get a shot. Okay, as we review this shot, you will realize that though the scene is filled with white, she's wearing a white dress, but her hair in front is black and is compensating for the camera's exposure meter. So what we'll do is to make you understand this better, I'll have Sudisha just pull back her hair and maybe you can tie it into a ponytail or something.
So what we are doing here is we are demonstrating how even the colors in your scene, especially the
Correct.
black and white, can alter the exposure.
Correct.
Right.
It can fool the meter into compensating for other colors and other tones in the image.
Exactly.
So now what we've done is we've taken the black portion
So
that
there
is
is
the
too
hair.
much of white now, and the black part is removed from the
Correct.
scene.
If I just shift here, you can see that already the camera is saying that there
One
is
stop.
almost
Almost
one stop. The camera is saying that the picture is getting overexposed.
Overexposed.
And I haven't even touched anything.
The settings are saying it's just that she's just tied her
Just
hair.
pulled back her hair,
Yeah.
and the camera tells us that we are overexposing,
Right.
and we need to underexpose. So if we go ahead and take a shot at these same settings, you would see, and if we check the light here in the previous shot and this, there is a slight difference, you can see.
Right.
Let's do one thing. We will go ahead and underexpose this shot and try and get
to get it back to zero.
to get it back to zero and see what happens. So I'm going to just dial down my shutter speed by 1 stop. That is 3 clicks. So I've just underexposed by 1 stop and I take a picture. And there we go. So we are able to match the exposure that was in the first image, that is right here.
Right.
So we can see the similar kind of light happening in the first and the third image. So this is how you can relate to more real life scenarios and see how the exposure meter works. But however, to demonstrate a completely opposite situation, let's do something. We will change the background.
That's what I was coming
Completely
to.
black?
There's too much of white now. Let's
Yes.
add a lot of black to it and see how camera reads the.
Absolutely. For our viewers, like we demonstrated in white conditions, what happens is there's too much light being reflected back to the camera.
Right.
So in that condition, the camera wanted us to underexpose.
Exactly.
Yeah, but in this condition, it does the opposite.
Okay.
Since very less light gets reflected back from a color like black,
Right.
and we have Sabah wearing black and the background is also black, so over here the camera will tend to overexpose. So let's have a look at the camera meter at the present moment, where I have the camera focused on Sabah, and if we check and we zero down, like we said, we have to bring the scale absolutely in the middle. So it gives me a setting of 1/15th of a second with f2.8 aperture and ISO is 250.
Right.
So let's take an image and see what does the camera. Yeah, if you see this output, Abhishek, you'll see that the blacks are a little overexposed.
Exactly.
They're closer to a dark gray or something like
Exactly.
that. So that's exactly what the camera meter will do in such a condition.
Right.
Because the camera, as we know, is tuned to hunt for 18% gray.
Right.
Whenever it does not find that, it will ask you to make your settings in a way that it reaches closer to or achieves 18% gray.
Right.
So in such a case, since we know that our blacks are not looking black, what we can do is try underexposing the shot. So let's try underexposing this particular shot by at least 1 stop.
Okay.
So as we had previously said, it's 3 clicks, and let's see. So that's 1 stop.
So that is giving us 1/25th of a second.
Sorry, 1/20th.
20th of a second with f2.8 and ISO 250.
I think this is moving a little bit. Yeah, approximately that much.
Okay.
So let's take an image here. So I'll just look a little towards the side. Yeah, perfect. Phew. So if we see this is slightly better.
Exactly. A little more closer towards black.
Yes. Let's try and go down another stop and see
Okay.
how it works. Like a little less than 2 stops.
Right.
So I think we are quite, quite close to what the colors that we are seeing at present.
Right.
But let's just do it a complete 2 stops and see what the result is.
For all our viewers here, we are just controlling the exposure by changing the shutter speed. We have kept the ISO and the aperture constant. So just for better understanding, we are just increasing the shutter speed to make it a little more underexposed, getting closer to black.
And let's just get it here. And this is quite close. I mean, this is absolutely how we can see it right now.
Right, right.
This is a tip to remember over here, that every time that you're shooting somebody wearing black against the black background, the camera will have a tendency to ask you to overexpose.
Exactly.
But this example should actually help you remember, and you should try underexposing the shot a little bit to get the real colors.
So normally what most of the people think is that getting the meter right onto a 0 is what we call proper exposure. Of course, technically that is right, but in these kind of condition where you have too much of white or too much of black, then you'll have to at times overexpose your shot deliberately or underexpose your shot deliberately to get that proper exposure, what you actually see through your eyes, right?
Correct. So that pretty much sums up explanation about how exposure metering works in such adverse conditions.
Exactly. Just for our viewers, here we are using Nikon D810.
Correct.
Just to demonstrate this particular scene, we are using 7200 mm lens so that we can fill the frame with a particular color. And this camera is hooked with the HDMI cable to that LCD screen so that our viewers can get the right view of what all settings we are using.
Correct. Abhishek, as we all know that the camera's metering system is programmed to look for 18% gray,
right,
because that is what the camera thinks of as a neutral ground. That is the color tone that the camera is always looking for.
Right.
So what happens is every time, be it black or white or any color, the camera kind of looks for 18% gray.
Right.
Just to demonstrate and for the better understanding of our viewers, what we've done is we've taken a big card over here in front of us, which has half of the side painted as black and half painted as white.
Exactly.
So what I'm going to do is, since we already said that the camera looks for 18% gray, I'm going to fill in the camera frame right now first with white to show you how does the camera meter work and what kind of results it produces.
Exactly. Okay.
So what I'll do is right now I'll just zoom in so that I can fill in the frame with white. What we'll do is, since we have the meter scale right in front of us,
right,
we'll change the shutter speed right now just to zero down the scale right in the middle so that we know this is the best exposure that the camera has chosen for this light condition. So let's just take a shot and see what happens.
The white is almost appearing like gray.
Gray.
Right.
Like I said, the camera is tuned to look for 18% gray, whereas we are shooting white.
Right.
So now what happens in this scenario is white is reflecting back a lot of light. So the camera meter thinks that there is a lot of light coming in. So it asks you or suggests underexposing the shot a little bit. So the meter settings that we did were actually underexposing the shot so that the camera achieves 18% gray.
Okay.
So let us try the same thing, what happens with black.
Okay. So we are keeping the same settings?
No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first turn this camera a little towards the black. Again, just fill this in and let's go back to the screen. If we see that it is right now the meter is all towards negative.
So it's almost like 3 stops underexposed. Right.
So let me just dial this down so that we are right in the middle at 0.
Okay.
So as you can see, it's 1/6 of a second at f2.8, and again the ISO is same at 250. Let us just take a shot over here. And if we see again,
black is also appearing gray.
Black is also appearing gray.
Right. Remember, Rohan, just for your viewers, when we pointed the camera towards the white area, it was kind of giving us overexposed 1 or 2 stops. Then we metered it down to 0 to get that proper exposure. Again, when we pointed the camera towards black, it was underexposing by more than 2 stops. So to get it right, we chose the shutter speed that can bring the meter down to 0, and that was 1/6 of a second.
Yes, so that is what actually the exposure metering does in the camera. So this is a very nice point to establish, Abhishek, for our viewers, that every time we are encountered with the settings or situations like this, we have to bear in mind that the camera is programmed to achieve 18% gray.
Exactly.
So if you are not getting your colors right, or it's a situation where you have absolutely too much white in the scene or too much black in the scene, one should try over or underexposing the shot according to the situation to get a better exposure.
So Rohan, that was some really exciting information. I think now all our viewers will actually nail the exposure every time they'll click the shutter release button, right?
Absolutely, Abhishek. I'm sure this is going to be very helpful understanding how the camera exposure meter works and getting a good exposure every time you press down that shutter button.
Right.
So that's all for this session, and we'll be back with many more interesting sessions. Until then, these are your Nikon buddies, Rohan and Abhishek, signing off. Hello everyone and welcome to the session of Understanding Histograms. I'm Rohan and I have with me Rohit, my colleague from the Nikon India technical team. We are here today to talk about histograms. Well Rohit, there are a lot of misconceptions, myths and confusion whenever it comes to histograms. People always ask us where we can use them, how we can use them to improve our photography. But most of the times it is based on confusion. People do not understand this concept at all. So before we start and help our viewers understand how we can use histograms, could you just explain what are histograms, like maybe a definition in photography terms?
Sure, absolutely, Rohan. See, histograms, simply put together, is a graphical representation of data, like any other graphs across industry. So with the photographic point of perspective, histograms would be defining different tonal values across a graph. Basically comprises of the brighter highlights depicted with the whites and the deeper shadows depicted with the blacks.
So let's have a look at this apparatus on our right, Rohit. This is a board which is painted half white and half black. Now black represents the darkest tones, which is 0 on the histogram, and white represents the brightest tones, which is 255. And right in the middle we have a grey card, which is 18% grey, which are what our camera meter is attuned to. You know, that's what the camera always looks for in any kind of tonal range. So to demonstrate this, let's take a few images of the white, the black and the whole apparatus and explain to our viewers how the histogram works and how does the camera tell you, using histograms, how you can tune your images and get the colors and the tonal range perfect in your images.
Oh, that's a great idea. I think that would sort out all the issues related to the histogram.
So Rohit, let us review our image. Now we have the first image, which is the image of the apparatus, which shows the white, the grey and the black. And if we look at the representation on our histogram, it shows 3 distinct peaks. Now these 3 distinct peaks are actually showing you the 3 distinct colors, or let's say tonal values, which is extreme black or darker area, or extreme white or the brighter areas, and the middle grays. So Rohit, what our users or what our viewers should take away from this exercise is that there are often questions about what should be the shape of the histogram, where should the histogram be placed to get a good exposure. So for better understanding of our viewers, let's just clarify that whenever you see your histogram moving a little towards the right, that means your images are getting a little overexposed or maybe have more brighter areas. Vice versa, if they're moving a little towards the darker areas or towards the left and has more dark shades in the image, then you have probably either an underexposed image or you have too many darker areas in your image. And to get a balanced exposure, you should have good range of tonal value, which has a little bit of the darks, the brighter areas and the midtones. And they should probably not go beyond the boundaries of the histogram,
which is the 2 and the 255.
Which is 0 and the 255. So to understand this better, let us review a few images and see a few images in real life scenario that will help our viewers understand.
Absolutely. As pictures make a lot of sense, those images will tell you what exactly is going on and that will correlate to the histograms.
Rohit, let's have a look at our first image. So here we have this image of a bird and you can see our histogram moving a little too much towards the right side.
Absolutely.
Which indicates that there are too many brighter areas. And if we look at the image, we see that it is kind of overexposed.
Yeah.
So whenever you see your histograms in real life situation like this or outdoors, and you see it moving a little too much towards the right, it is an indication for you that you have to adjust your exposure to bring it a little more towards the middle to grab more tonal range or get more tonal range in your image. Now let's go to our second image and see what kind of a histogram that creates.
Absolutely.
So Rohit, let's have a look at this image. This is an awesome tiger. I think this was shot in Bandhavgarh. And if we see the histogram here, it's kind of peaking in the middle, but it has good tonal range. We have good details in the darker areas as well as in the brighter areas, and the midtones also look quite nice.
Quite nice.
So I think this is a good example for a balanced exposure. And somehow I think we can clear out the myth about people having ideas about the histogram, various shapes. It's either a M or an inverted V or a U, but mostly it is not true. I think
it mostly depends on the kind of exposure you're having in a certain lighting situation. So it really isn't like as you mentioned, not an inverted U or a parabola or whatever it is. So it's
basically how we adjust our camera to a certain lighting condition and how we can get a good exposure which has details all across and has a good tonal value or a tonal range in our image.
So Rohan, I would like to add something more about the histograms. See, histograms are not very difficult to understand. Once you have a good understanding of the histograms, they actually really help you. They aid you when you're outdoors working in very harsh lights. So it's the histograms which come in very handy. You basically would be looking at the histograms and then you can very well establish whether the exposure that you got is a proper exposure or not.
Yeah, because I've seen in a lot of brightly lit days or bright sunny conditions, we can hardly see the output on our camera monitor. So if we have a look at the histograms, we at least know if we've got a good exposure or not.
Sure.
So that's all we have for histograms. I hope we have been able to help you understand histograms better. I'm sure you would be able to put the learnings to good use while reviewing your images and understanding exposure better. So this is all for this session, and we will be back with more interesting sessions soon. These are your Nikon buddies, Rohan and Rohit, signing off.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Understanding Flash and Sync Speed. I am Abhishek and I have with me Anindo, my colleague from Nikon India technical team. Today both of us will help you understand how flash and sync speed works. So Anindo, we often get many queries, especially from studio photographers, that I'm trying to freeze a motion using my studio lights and I get black band in my image.
So to understand how we can remove the black band, we have two things that majorly concentrate on the image. The first is our sync speeds that we need to understand and get a clear view on. And second part would be talking about the auto FP feature on our Nikon speed lights. So after we are done talking about both of these, we'll be easily able to remove the band and we can easily show motion if we want to freeze motion also.
Right.
We can do that in the studio setup. So we talk about understanding sync speed. To understand the sync speed, we first need to understand how our camera shutter works. Our camera shutter is made up of two curtains, the first curtain and the second curtain. You can presume these to be the curtains in your own house. The curtains in your own house move horizontally, allowing light to come into the room. Similarly, our camera shutter is also like a curtain. The first curtain will go up to allow light to come into the camera sensor, and when you're done taking the exposure, there is the rear curtain or the second curtain which follows and blocks the light from coming into the sensor.
So Anindo, that was pretty nice explanation of how first curtain and second curtain works. So for better understanding, let's show our viewers one more time this animation piece and explain in detail how it actually works. So this is how the two curtain works. When you press the shutter release button, it tells the camera to open the shutter. The first curtain opens to allow the sensor to be exposed to light, and then the second curtain follows the first curtain to block the light. Then the curtain resets back to the first curtain and wait for you to press the shutter release button for the next shot. Now let's watch that animation again. Notice that the first curtain opened completely before the second curtain begins to follow. Now this will only happen at slower shutter speed, usually at speed of 200th of a second to 250th of a second. Now Anindo, let's see what happens when we increase the shutter speed. When shutter speed is faster, the second curtain can't wait for the first curtain to open all the way. Notice in this animation, the curtain is not fully open and not allowing enough light to pass through. It's just have slit of light passing through and hitting the image sensor. This slit becomes smaller and smaller as we keep on increasing the shutter speed.
In the animation, you understood how our camera shutter works. So now we can get to talk about the sync speed. Sync speed is actually the fastest shutter speed in which the first curtain goes up, and before the second curtain rises, the flash fires in between and exposes the subject. So simply put, the flash sync is basically the fastest shutter speed with which we can use the flash.
So Anindo, let's have a look at the same animation piece, but this time we'll use flash. So when our camera shutter speed is set to sync speed or slower, a few things happen. When you press the shutter, the first curtain opens, and as soon as the first curtain is fully open, flash fires, and then the second curtain closes. Now normally if you have set the shutter speed too high, then you will have issues. Let's have a closer look at higher shutter speed When you press the shutter release button, the first curtain begins to open, but before it can open fully, the second curtain begins to close. And when the first curtain is fully open, the flash fires. But this time, the part of the sensor is covered by the second curtain. This will cause the images to have black band or that black area. Faster your shutter speed, broader black band you will have in your images.
Now, as Abhishek explained why we get a black band in our image, we can do something to counter this. First thing we can do is either we can use the highest sync speed available in our camera, which is 1/258th of a second, or use the Nikon speed light feature, which is auto sync speed, wherein you can use a highest shutter speed of up till 1/8000 of a second.
So adding to what just Anindo said, if you want to use higher shutter speed with the flash, you need to use this feature called Auto FP. And to do that, you'll have to go to camera menu options. You can find this feature under custom settings menu, bracketing in flash, and then going to flash sync speed, and then choosing either 1/250S Auto FP or 1/320S Auto FP. We recommend choosing the later, that is 1/320S Auto FP. This option enables your camera to use higher shutter speeds of even 1/8000 of a second with the flash.
So Abhishek, I think for better understanding, we need to go to a photo studio and try this feature, which is the Auto FP feature, and we can show the results also.
So Anindo, let's demonstrate how one can shoot at higher shutter speed using flash. To help us, we have Himakshi with us, and she'll be helping us in demonstrating flash sync speed and how one can shoot at higher shutter speed using flash. To do that, we are using right now Nikon D750 with 2470mm lens and an SB910 speed light.
Right.
We have a very unique feature in D750 that you can actually trigger this flash off camera using the inbuilt flash of the camera, which we call commander mode, wherein you need to do certain settings and then you can actually fire the flash using the inbuilt flash of the camera. But before we do that, we'll just take a couple of shots. One shot we'll take at the highest sync speed provided by the camera, which is flash sync speed. The camera D750 that gives the sync speed is 1/200th of a second. Then we'll try another picture at a Auto FP mode, that is you can increase the shutter speed further beyond 200th of a second. So we'll be shooting two images and our idea is to freeze the motion. So what we'll be doing here is we'll be using these playing cards and we'll throw them up in the air, and the idea here is to freeze those cards along with the model. So let's see how the images come first at a normal flash sync speed provided by the camera at 1/200th of a second, and then we'll jump onto the Auto FP mode and see what are the results. First, just hand over the camera to me and I'll give you the flash.
Right.
So what we'll do is, we take this flash and set the flash to remote mode.
Right.
And I'll just pop up the inbuilt flash of the camera and I'll set it to commander. I'll say I can actually diffuse, or I can actually cut the power of this flash, and this flash will then act only as a commander unit to trigger this flash off camera. To fire Nikon speedlight off camera, that is if you want to use off camera flash, the setting that you need to do in your camera is you just have to go to custom setting menu, then you go to bracketing in flash, and under that there is something called flash control for built-in flash. Now there are various options like TTL, manual, repeating flash and commander mode, but we will be utilizing commander mode since we want to fire the flash off camera. Just to keep in mind, if you don't want the built-in flashlight to illuminate your subject or show any kind of impact on your subject in terms of lighting, just disable the output of this flash. Now this built-in flash will now act as a remote trigger to fire the off-camera flash, that is your external speed light. Under group A, you choose TTL, that is through the lens or automatic mode for the flash, and then set the power intensity of your flash. It could be +3 and you can further drop it down to 0, and then set the channel. Right now we are at channel 1. The two things that you need to set in your speed light is group A and channel 1. Once you do that, press OK. Now your camera inbuilt flash is ready to trigger the external flash or the speed light. So our flash settings are done to remotely trigger SB910 using inbuilt flash of D750. What I'll do is right now, for a couple of minutes, all these lights will go off and this whole situation will turn out totally dark. So to demonstrate what we are trying to achieve, this is very important. So what we'll do is, we'll request all of our assistants here just to switch off all the lights. Okay, so what I've done is I've locked my focus onto Himakshi, and my shutter speed is provided by the camera. That is the highest flash sync speed, shutter speed of 1/200th of a second. Right now this is the highest sync speed provided by the camera. So let's see how the images come. Go. Can I have the lights please? Come on, Indu, let's review this shot. Now you can see this wherein cards are not sharp because the shutter speed was not fast enough to freeze them. So this is what happens when you are shooting at the available sync speed given by the camera. By this camera, as I told you, it was 1/200th of a second. So this shutter speed was not good enough to freeze the falling cards. So what we are going to do now is we are going to use this feature, which is called Auto FP feature, in our camera. And in this camera, Auto FP is provided at 1/250th of a second. That means I can keep the shutter speed even below 1/250th of a second, or if I want to pull my shutter speed to even 1/4000th of a second, I can do that. So let's play around with shutter speed, higher shutter speed, and see how it works and whether this is able to freeze the falling cards or not. So let us try that. Can we switch off the lights, please? So what I have set right now is, again, I'm using camera's inbuilt flash to trigger the flash that Anindo is having right now, which is SB910. So I can remotely trigger it. I'm setting my flash sync speed to 1/250s Auto FP. So this will allow me to pull my shutter speed further higher, probably 1/500th of a second. I will try that kind of shutter speed to freeze the falling cards. So let's see how it comes. Here I lock the focus. Go. Can we have the lights please? Come on, we'll review the shot. So here you can see we've been able to freeze all the falling cards in the frame.
This is so much better than the previous image.
Exactly, and this happened because we were using that Auto FP feature and I was using the shutter speed of 1/500th of a second. Using this feature is very easy. It's not a tough nut to crack. I believe our viewers must have understood how one can use higher shutter speed with the flash.
Right.
Thank you, Himakshi, for audio help. Anindo, that was some really informative session that we just did with our model.
Yeah.
And I think for our viewers also, we shared a lot of information about how to use higher shutter speed with flash and how to avoid that black band in the image and what is sync speed. So I think that was good.
I think it was very helpful and will be used by a lot of photographers.
Exactly.
Because this is a common problem that many studio photographers face.
Exactly. That's it for this episode, and we'll be back with some more interesting sessions. Until next time, these are your Nikon buddies Abhishek and Anindo signing off.
Hello everyone and welcome to this session of exposure bracketing. I'm Rohan and I have with me Abhishek, my colleague from the Nikon India technical team. Hi Abhishek.
Hi Rohan.
So Abhishek, we are here today to talk about exposure bracketing. How can we help our viewers understand this in a better manner?
Rohan, exposure bracketing, it's a feature inside the DSLR and can be utilized in various ways. One way is it gives you multiple exposure of the same subject. Now, to all our viewers, when you talk about exposure bracketing, you can even do it manually when you are shooting in manual mode. It's like you take one photograph overexposed, one photograph underexposed, and one balanced photograph in terms of exposure.
So you vary the exposure basically.
But as I said, one way is to do it manually in manual mode. Another way is there is an option given in most of our DSLRs which is called bracketing. There is a button there. You can actually choose that option and you can tune your camera in such a manner that, suppose I choose 3 brackets of exposure. and then I click or press the shutter release button 3 times. So it will give me 3 different exposures, one under, one over and one balanced exposed photograph.
And I'm sure you can set, the exposure level also in between, like third stops, 2 stops, up to I think 2 or 3 stops, variation between the exposures.
Exactly. So you can, as you said, I can go like 1/3 stops over, 1/3 stop under and one balanced shot. Unique thing about our DSLRs are the bracketing starts from 3 brackets and even goes up to 9 brackets. So what you can get is, in certain DSLR you can get 3 different exposure of one subject, and in high-end bodies you can even get 9 different exposure of the same subject.
So Abhishek, how do we go ahead and tell our users where and when can we use bracketing? What will be an ideal situation where you will opt for exposure bracketing?
Bracketing is being utilized in various manners. One, if I'm not sure as a photographer, I'm shooting in a brightly lit condition and I'm not sure what kind of exposure I'll be getting, okay, in terms of lighting condition.
Okay.
So I just put my camera into bracketing mode and I'll take 3 different exposures or 4 different or 9 different exposure, whatever my camera body supports, and then I can go back home and choose the best exposure I got. Another way is, like for example, these days there has been a trend of something called HDR photography, high dynamic range.
Yes, that's been catching up a lot.
Exactly. And high dynamic range means human eyes have good dynamic range. That means I can see details in the shadow areas as well as in the highlight areas. Now, most of the cameras can give you either details in the shadow areas or in the highlight areas. It is really very difficult to tune your camera in such a manner that it can give you a good dynamic range as compared to human eyes. So what people do is, most of the professional photographers who are into HDR photography, they take 3 or 4 different exposures by using bracketing and then club all these images together to create a high dynamic range shot.
This high dynamic range shot, once you achieve it, you're trying to say that it is more closer to what human vision is.
Exactly.
What our eyes actually see.
Exactly.
Is there a demonstration that we can show our viewers how we can actually set our cameras and take these kind of shots?
Of course, but before we move to demonstration, one more thing I forgot to tell all our viewers. The reason of using bracketing is when you don't have actually time to set your exposure right in manual mode.
Okay, okay, I understand.
Suppose a scene is right in front of you and it will pass by within couple of seconds. So you just tune your camera in
Set
bracketing.
it on auto exposure mode.
Exactly, and take 3 different exposure of the scene. Coming back to demonstration, yes, of course, we'll be demonstrating how to set your camera for bracketing, exposure bracketing. So let's do that.
Yes, let's go ahead.
So Ron, here we are, just to give a small demonstration on how auto bracketing works in DSLR. Right now what we are doing is, we are using a Nikon D810 camera with 24-70mm lens. This camera is hooked with the HDMI cable to that LCD television so that our viewers can get a very clear understanding of what we are doing inside the camera. Before we do the settings when it comes to auto bracketing, most of our FX bodies have got dedicated button called BKT for auto bracketing. And for DX users, one has to go inside the menu options. By pressing the I button, you can go inside the menu options and you can see this option BKT, and then you can choose the various bracketing levels.
So Abhishek, why don't we just demonstrate and show what kind of settings go in when you have to, when you bracket your exposure?
Right, Ron. For that, we are using this beautiful and colorful fruit basket so that the variations in the exposure are pretty much visible. So what I'll do is, I'll first press this BKT button, which is the bracketing button. Right now you can see on the screen, it's stating off 1.0 and the meter in plus and minus, which we normally refer in manual mode to set our exposure right, or we use in exposure compensation to increase or decrease the exposure. So right now this is showing this exposure meter, so my bracket is off right now. What I'll do is, I'll rotate the command dial, and once I do that, you see I get 3F, that means 3 frames.
Correct.
And 1.0 means 1 stop.
3 frames will be shot at exposure difference of 1 stop.
Exactly. So you can see 3 frames will be taken by the camera of the same subject when 3 times I press the shutter release button. So when I press the first time, meter on the 0 will be activated and I'll get a balanced exposed shot. When I press the second time, the 1 stop underexposed shot will be taken, and when I press the third time, 1 stop overexposed image will be taken. So I'll have 3 different exposures. And I can also actually change the stops in terms of exposure. So right now you see 1 stop. By rotating the sub command dial, I can actually set it to like 2 stops. Now you can see on the meter scale, the exposure variation is now 2 stops. I can also set it to 2/3 stops. I can set it to 1/3 stops. So accordingly, based on the scene and how much dynamic range I want in the scene, I can choose the various exposure levels. Right now, let's keep it to like 1 stop. So we have 3 frames at 1 stop difference. So I'll have 1 stop underexposed, I'll have 1 stop overexposed, and 1 balance shot. So once I press the shutter release button, this is a shot which I got. And when I see the meter scale right now, you see the bar in the center that was on the 0 is no more there.
So that indicates that the balanced exposure has already been taken by the camera.
Exactly. And the other 2 exposure are still there. One at underexposed and 1 stop overexposed are still visible. That means I'm still in that bracketing mode. So if I take the second shot, so this is the underexposed one. You see 1 stop underexposed, that bar is gone now, right? I'll take the third shot. This is overexposed, and you see the camera is reset back to 3 frames.
So it's a very helpful interface on the camera also, which helps you, you just can't forget or you just can't miss out.
Exactly.
So the camera tells you that you've already taken the balance
Right.
and the underexposed shot, and then finally the overexposed shot.
Right, Ron. And the good thing about today's DSLR is I can just not restrict myself in shooting to just 3 frames. I can go like 5 frames, so I'll have like approximately 5 frames at various exposure levels of 1 stop difference. I can go even 7 frames. I can go even 9 frames.
Yes, I think we're covering a huge tonal range by doing that.
Right. And also, if I rotate the command dial other way around, you see I can shoot like 1 stop balanced and 1 stop under. So if I have a very brightly lit situation, I know I don't have to overexpose here, so I can restrict myself to this bracketing mode, wherein I get 1 stop under and 1 balance shot. If I have a very dark situation already in front of me, so I know I have to overexpose, so I can take 1 stop over and 1 balance shot.
And in this also you can manage the exposure variation, as in 1
Right,
stop or
right.
1/3 a stop.
And these are other parameters like 3 stops underexposed. So I'll have 2 stops going up to 3 frames, 1 balanced, 1 under, and then further more under,
So
like
2
2
stops
stops under. Yeah. And then again, we'll have similarly overexposed. I'll set it back to 3 frames. So let's take a couple of more shots at various other exposure levels, like 5 frames. I'll set it to, let me set it to 2 stops. So good thing about today's DSLR is that I am right now on single frame. So single release mode, that is I'll have to press the shutter release button all 5 times if I've set 5 frames. So what I'll do is I'll set it to continuous high, and then I'll keep the shutter release button pressed, and you see after 5 frames camera will stop, and I'll have all 5 different exposures in front of me, right? And this is a highly overexposed shot, so the highlights are blinking, right? So this is the beauty of having auto bracketing feature in your camera. And for all the DX users, as I mentioned, you'll have to go into the menu option to activate your bracketing. For that, you need to press the I button, and then you see the bracketing icon BKT written on it, and then you choose it, and then you choose various exposure levels like 1/3 stop, 2/3 stops, or 1 stop to get that dynamic range in your shot. This is it about bracketing. Let's head back to the studio.
So Abhishek, that was a very helpful demonstration for our viewers to understand and how to set up the camera for exposure bracketing and take different exposures of the same subject.
Right, Ron. As we mentioned about HDR photography, it's not really possible within this limited time to actually show our viewers how to post-process HDR images, but it's really simple. Most of the photo editing software are capable of actually post-processing HDR images, that is merging 3 or 4 different exposures together and create a good HDR image out of it. What we'll do is we'll leave our viewers with some stunning HDR images which we created during our course of our outdoor workshops.
Yeah.
And we hope people will enjoy those images, and we'll share some more interesting sessions with you later. Until next time, these are your Nikon buddies, Abhishek and Rohan, signing off.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode on time-lapse photography. I'm Naveen and I have my colleague Rohit with me from the Nikon India technical team.
Hi Naveen.
Hi.
Talking about time-lapse photography is always interesting. It's quite an excitement that we get. Time-lapse photography is the process of making itself is so interesting.
Yeah.
And the end result that you get is quite exciting.
In fact, it has been a craze of late. Now, almost, in almost every video today, there's bits of time-lapse, I can say.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Naveen, could you tell our viewers what is time-lapse photography all about?
Definitely. Okay, if you look at it this way, Rohit, haven't you seen those videos where clouds move very fast, or you can see day turning into night over a couple of minutes, or even stars panning across night sky? So these are time lapse. So basically anything that is captured that happens over a longer duration and it's compressed into a shorter duration. That is the simplest way to put it. But why don't you explain to our viewers a little bit more elaborate? Let's go a little technical.
See, time-lapse photography is a process where your camera captures multiple images at a certain interval. And then the camera's inbuilt capability basically combines all those images to produce some stunning videos.
And it's a full HD video.
It's a full HD video.
Absolutely. Unlike in time-lapse photography, interval timer basically gives you individual pictures. So that way you have much better control over every single frame that you will be ultimately making into a time-lapse video. Now, in order to make a video out of individual images, all you need to do is download your images to any video editing software and render it according to your requirement.
I think we need to go to a place which has all the elements for time-lapse. So where do you think we should be heading, Naveen?
You know what, Rohit? Again, Kerala is one place where nature unfolds itself in front of you. You have all the key elements of nature in one frame. So I can't think of a better place to shoot a good time lapse right now.
Oh, that sounds like a plan.
Let's head to Kerala then. Yeah. Let's do that. Okay, Rohit. So here we are back again in Kerala this time. Here we are shooting some time-lapse videos. So, but before we start shooting, how do you feel about the view? I mean, look at that.
Naveen, I can't complain. This is one of the most amazing views.
Exactly.
And it has all the recipe that you need for the time-lapse videos.
Absolutely.
We have the mist and the fog going across the frame.
Yeah.
So, which is going to be very dynamic.
Right.
And with the right settings, we will have a very good time lapse.
Right. Now about settings again, which is a very crucial factor, I should say, especially when it comes to time-lapse photography. Like earlier we mentioned, this is a process where the camera keeps on taking images.
Yeah.
So there has to be absolute uniformity between each image. If there's even the slightest variation, your time-lapse photography goes for a toss. Okay?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, if you're thinking about the feature, even if you don't have a built-in time-lapse feature, which is right now there on almost all the models for our FX range, the full frame range. Yeah. However, on the DX cameras, most of them have the interval timer, which does almost the same thing like a built-in time-lapse, but it gives us still images.
Yeah, it's not, the time-lapse is an automated process where it makes a movie for you, whereas with the interval, you got to do it yourself.
Exactly.
In a time-lapse video, the settings are the most key.
Yeah,
you choose your location with the right settings, depending on how the movement is happening, you choose your interval, which is going to decide how your video is going to be.
Yeah, so let's see what settings we can use. Now, this comes really handy, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
That's the D750 that we are using here with a 20mm, the latest 20mm 1.8 lens. The best part I love about this is the vary angle.
Oh, that comes in handy because in this situation you want to look up what you're framing, so that comes in really very handy.
Now I don't have to bend down every time, so that comes really handy. About the settings, first lesson or first tip, shoot manual. Because everything has to be under your control.
Absolutely.
There's no chance for making errors in manual mode. Plus, your settings will be consistent. It doesn't keep variating even if the light changes. So, first, like I said, manual mode. Second being our quality. So I guess let's go for cloudy white balance.
Cloudy is good enough, yeah.
Absolutely. Picture control, like the newest of our DSLRs have the flat feature. So since we are making a video, let's put it on flat.
Flat would be good.
Absolutely. Now, what we need to concentrate a lot more is on the time-lapse menu that we have on our cameras.
You set the interval based on how the scene is dynamic.
Exactly.
In case you have a fast-moving cloud, you choose basically a smaller interval.
Right.
But if you have a slower moving subject or the clouds,
absolutely,
you would choose a larger interval.
So as you can see here right now, if you consistently look at the clouds, it's not very fast moving.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think in this situation, we're going to choose something longer.
Yeah. By longer, we mean the interval duration. So here, let's say if I'm setting 4 seconds, what that means is in every 4 seconds, the camera is shooting an image.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for this, I'll prefer to go with a 4-second interval.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah.
Shooting time is basically for how long do you want your camera to do this job, to keep shooting images. Because let's say if this cloud from the left to the right, that's what we intend to capture, the movement.
Yeah.
We have a fair idea. Now I'm making this wild guess that it might happen within say 30 minutes since the movement is slow. What do you feel?
I think that's absolutely right. And the other way to look at it is once you choose your interval or the shooting time, what you could see is it generally calculates for you what is the duration of the video.
It will even show you the output duration of your video. Say, it'll tell you, are you going to get a 10-second long video or are you getting a 12-second? Right now it says 12.
12.
Yeah.
Generally, a thumb rule is like we generally try to do minimum of 10 seconds video.
Right.
That gives you a very good perspective of the entire vista.
Exactly. Yeah. Shooting time right now, I'll be going for say 50 minutes.
50 minutes is ideal.
Yeah. So I hope we are making this very clear. The shooting time is 50 minutes. So in 50 minutes, during every 4 seconds, the camera is shooting an image.
Absolutely.
So right now I'll switch this off. And one very important tip, you autofocus your camera first, you lock your focus and switch your lens to M mode. Reason being, on autofocus mode, for every single shot, the camera autofocuses. So ideally, let's lock focus.
Yeah.
Right now, my focus is locked on the road that you can see because that sort of is conveying the midground.
Yeah.
My settings are f10. In fact, I'll get it to f11. That gets me a good depth of field.
Yeah, as you must have seen from our landscape episodes, the f11 would be ideal because we want almost everything in focus.
Exactly. Let's first try shooting a still image just to see how the exposure works out.
It's a very good idea to check the exposure before you start.
Exactly.
With the
I think this works fairly good. Yeah. So once you lock your still image, if you feel exposure is fine, you have locked the focus. Now we go to the same menu, time-lapse photography. And now that it's set, let's press on the start button. Listen closely. And let's just listen to the music of the camera for some seconds.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're hearing the click. So it's basically taking pictures at our set interval.
Yeah.
In this case, we have chosen
4 seconds.
4 seconds.
Yeah. So in every 4 seconds, this guy will keep doing its job. Okay, Rohit. So let the camera do its job before our legs go to sleep. Let's just stand up.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think there's a lot to shoot for interval timer here. In order to explain this a lot more better, Rohit, let's head to a different location.
I think that'll be great. For interval timer, we'll go to a new location.
Let's do that. Alright guys, so as you have already seen, we have managed to grab a pretty nice time-lapse video using the inbuilt time-lapse feature on our DSLRs. Now let's move on to the interval timer. Now, when we talk about interval timer, this is specifically for all you guys who don't have the built-in time-lapse feature. Having said that, there are certain advantages that you particularly get by using the interval timer mode. This is a process where the camera does not compile your still images into a video like what time-lapse used to do for you. You actually get, sort of still images. You get still images for your interval timer. But before we get into the shooting bit of it, Rohit, why don't you tell us about the manual settings that can be used on the
absolutely.
camera? Which is, I guess, a very key factor.
Very key factor. First and foremost, it's very important for you to make sure that you lock your exposure. So whatever you're trying to shoot,
correct,
it's essential that you lock your exposure and make sure any of the none of the features like white balance and other aspects are turned auto. Make sure they're all turned off and they're not in the auto mode.
Okay.
And then once you've got your exposure, it is very essential to switch the lens from an autofocus to a manual mode.
Another major difference when you set for built-in time lapse and interval timer is there's a little bit more of mathematics included when it's about interval timer. Because you have to have a rough calculation of how long do you want the video, how many pictures do you want the camera to shoot. So there are certain parameters which will be here on the camera. Alright, so how do you do this calculation? Remember that the videos that you usually see on your television screen is played back at 24 FPS, which means in a second the television screen is playing 24 images. Now consider that you need a interval timer video of say which lasts for 2 seconds, which means in a second it's playing 24 images, 2 seconds makes that 48 images. So you need your camera to come up with at least 48 images to make a 2-second long video. That's based on the calculation that we do. But our suggestion is shoot a little bit extra number of frames because you never know what kind of effect you want in your output video. So shoot a little bit of extra number of images. If it's 48 images, I would suggest shoot at least 64 or even 80 would be fair enough to do that. Because once you set it on your camera does the rest of the job for you.
Absolutely. It's always wise to shoot more.
Absolutely. Exactly. So let the camera do the job while it shoots. We'll also show you a couple of interval timer videos that we have managed to collate. So let's head back to the studio, Rohit.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Let's do that. Rohit, just like I told you, so we'll just show you the video, the time-lapse video, but literally nature was actually unfolding itself. Just have a look at it. This is a night sky. Before we leave, let us show you a couple of time-lapse videos more that we have shot during various outdoor workshops conducted at Nikon School. Till next time, I'm Naveen and Rohit, your Nikon buddies, signing off.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of DSLR Filmmaking. I am Abhishek and I have Aman along with me from Nikon India technical team, and today we will be sharing a lot of information on how to shoot quality videos using your DSLRs. So Aman, hi.
Hi.
So what do you think about DSLR filmmaking?
Well, DSLR filmmaking globally is already there, and India also is picking up really fast.
Right.
And many production houses prefer to use DSLRs over film cameras. The reason for that is because of the compactness and also the accessibility of the different lenses which are used to get different perspectives.
And DSLRs today can go with many third-party accessories, be it Steadicam, sliders, jibs, and they can give you that quality cinematic view.
Absolutely.
As compared to film cameras. A lot of people, to all our viewers who intend to shoot quality videos using your DSLRs, it's not rocket science to set your DSLR right for shooting videos. The settings are more or less similar to what you set for still photography. It's just that you need to keep in mind certain elements before you start shooting videos. So Aman, let's tell our viewers how to set your camera before you start rolling the video.
Okay.
Okay. Right now, what I have chosen from the frame rate is 1080, that is full HD output at 24 FPS.
Right.
Now, based on what FPS I'm shooting in, I'll decide my shutter speed.
Yeah.
So it is very important to take control over your camera while shooting videos. So I prefer to shoot in manual mode. You can also shoot videos in P mode, S mode and aperture priority auto mode. But I prefer to shoot in manual mode. Hence, I can set the shutter speed. Now if you're shooting at 24 FPS, your shutter speed should ideally be 1/48th of a second. That is just double of your FPS. So if you're shooting at 30 FPS, shutter speed would be 1/60th of a second. This is just to avoid any kind of rolling shutter movement in your videos. So right now I'm shooting at 24 FPS. I'll set my shutter speed to 1/48th of a second. But DSLR don't have 1/48th of a second shutter speed. So I'll go to the closer one, that is 1/50th of a second. Now coming to the depth in your videos. Another thing that you need to look into is what kind of depth of field you want in your videos. Similar to still photography, if you want shallow depth of field, you go for wide apertures like 2.8. Another parameter that you need to check in your camera before you start recording video is the picture control.
Right.
Now, you set the picture control right in order to get proper colors in your videos in terms of color grading. Now, based on that, like you have standard, neutral, vivid, monochrome, portrait, landscape and flat picture control for your still photography. In D750 and D810 camera, like we have something called flat picture control, which is a new picture control specially designed for shooting videos. Now what it does is it actually flattens the whole video in terms of subduing the colors and bringing out details from the shadow areas, so that editor get lot of liberty in post-processing the video in terms of color grading it. So this is one important feature which is called flat. Now if your camera doesn't have flat picture control, you don't have to worry. You just have to go to neutral and set it. It's almost similar to flat. But apart from that, keep in mind, you further go inside the picture control, you'll have many parameters like sharpness, clarity. Clarity is something new that has been introduced with D750 and D810. You have brightness, saturation, hue, all these parameters are there. For shooting videos, it is very important that you keep your sharpness minimum. So that in post-processing, you can still add little bit of sharpness if required, because if you keep the sharpness level little on the higher side, your videos will have a lot of edges and it won't look good in terms of quality. Yeah. So keep your sharpness as low as possible. Second, keep your contrast as low as possible. Keeping contrast low will bring out details from the shadow areas, and again in post-processing you can further enhance the contrast, you can add further more colors to it and give a different feel to your videos. So these two things shall be kept in mind. Rest all parameters you don't have to touch, keep it the same way they are inside the DSLR by default. So you don't have to change them. So this was all about picture control. So Aman, another challenge that a lot of people face is how to focus while recording videos. Because focusing in DSLR is little different from normal camcorders or video cameras. But how to do that, would you like to explain to our viewers?
Definitely. For shooting still subjects, we've got 3 focusing modes, that is AFS, AFC, AFA. But when we do videos, we've got 2 focusing modes, that is AFS and AFF. Now AFF stands for full-time autofocus.
So AFS focusing mode is widely used for still subjects. Like if you are shooting a particular scene wherein the subject is not moving and your camera position is also very static, you are not moving the camera very much, you use AFS. Along with that, if you are shooting something in motion, subject coming towards you or going away from you or moving diagonally, then you use AFF so that your camera can actually track the focus onto the subject.
So the next one which we come across is the normal. So normal is when you are shooting at a focal length of about 50 millimeter,
35 mm,
millimeter.
50 mm, right.
The next one is subject tracking. So when you want to shoot a moving subject, you can lock your focus onto a subject and you can track it.
So it is very helpful while you are in a wildlife scenario, you're shooting some animal that is moving towards you or away from you or anything that is moving. You can actually put it on subject tracking and camera will automatically track the focus and will keep the focus locked onto the subject.
Right. And the last one is your face detection, where the camera allows you to detect a face.
Yeah, that's what the name suggests, that it can automatically detect the face and keep the focus locked onto the human faces.
Right.
Right. So these are focus area modes that needs to be kept in mind before you start shooting videos, depending on the kind of scene you are shooting. Another thing that you need to check is the white balance. Like you do in still photography, you set your white balance right as per the prevailing lighting condition. Similarly, in videos also you have to set the white balance right to get proper colors. Like for example, if you are shooting in sunlight, then you need to choose direct sunlight from the preset white balance. If you are shooting in cloudy weather, you need to choose cloudy white balance from the preset available in your camera. So Aman, what else?
Well, Abhishek, we've covered most of the basic tips and techniques. Now let us head to the location and showcase some videos. Hi everyone, welcome to this beautiful location in Kerala. Today here we are to shoot some amazing clips for you. Back in the studio, we talked about basic DSLR filmmaking, which was more focused towards the beginners.
Yeah, Aman, as you said, back in the studio, the techniques and tips that we shared in terms of camera settings were more concentrated towards the people who have just bought the DSLR and they just want to know how video can be recorded in certain situations. Now we will be talking about how you can shoot professional quality of films using your DSLRs. Right now we are using D810, both of us are using Nikon D810 cameras along with 24-70mm lenses. Of course we will be changing lenses as per the scene and lighting condition, but you know, for professional quality of films it is very important to look into certain aspect of choosing the right equipment, and choosing this kind of camera system will always give you high quality of video footages to enhance your films and videography experience. Sturdy tripod is must. Of course you can use many things while filming your footages. There are sliders, steady cams, matte boxes, but today we will be talking about more how you can use one camera, couple of lenses and a tripod to extract good quality, high quality of video footages. Here I am, and Aman is somewhere else shooting at some other location, but I found something very interesting right in front of me. There's a bottle lying in the foreground and a beautiful seascape in the background. Now remember, when it comes to composition in filming, it's more or less the same thing what you do in photography. So it's nothing different. So you have to keep all the rules of composition in mind. What you implement in photography, the same rules are implemented in your films. So I'm trying to create a beautiful frame and let's see what we get. One more tip, that while shooting professional quality of films, always shoot manual. Your exposure mode should be manual. Even when you lock the focus, put your lens in manual mode so that camera doesn't shift the focus very often. And I've been very selective by focusing just onto the bottle, and let's see how it comes at various other camera settings.
Alright, I've just changed my lens from the 24-70 to the 85 1.4. The reason to do that is when I was using the 24-70, I was getting a wider frame even at 70mm. So now with the 85, I'm able to get in much more closer to my subject and as well as be able to negate whatever there is in the background. A longer focal length helps me with that.
So Aman, did you manage to pull out some footage?
Yes, I definitely got some great clips today.
Okay, so let's get back to the studio, review all the footages, and for our viewers, while reviewing these footages, we will share a lot of tips and techniques on how we got these footages and what all camera settings you need to do. So let's hit the studio, back to studio.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we are, back to our studios, Aman. So you managed to pull out some clips.
Yes, I got some beautiful clips.
Okay, and I also shot some really amazing clips using D810 and Nikon D750. Let us review all the footages that we have collated and let's see and let's share some more tips with our viewers based on the footages we have shot.
Absolutely.
So talking about this first footage, the frame is same. Like you can see, in one frame I have got greater depth of field and in another frame I have shallow depth of field. I have kept the same principles in mind that you do for photography, that for shallow depth of field I have chosen wider aperture of 2.8 and for greater depth of field I have chosen aperture of f8, f11. So you can see these clips that can define how you can actually change the perspective by just changing the aperture even while recording videos.
So the second clip which you see is of the same subject but shot at various white balances.
Right.
So shooting at various white balances gives you different feel and look to the picture.
Exactly. So as I can see, the same scene is totally looking different in all the white balances that are used here in this video.
Absolutely.
And just to add, you can actually use cloudy for daylight to give a different creative look to your videos.
Right.
So cloudy white balance can be used even during bright sunlight to give a different look, a warm look to your videos. And similarly, you can use various other white balances to change the whole look and feel of your videos.
Right.
Now this footage has been shot in really low lighting condition using Nikon D750. Now Nikon cameras are really capable of handling these kind of lighting condition. The video has been shot at 6400 ISO.
Wow.
And you don't see any kind of noise and grains on the video.
Absolutely.
Along with that, you can also create beautiful bokeh using prime lenses like 85mm 1.4, 50mm 1.8, 50mm 1.4. Now these prime lenses are very useful in creating cinematic bokehs in your shots, especially in low lighting conditions. So these days you don't have to really worry about whether your camera would be able to record videos in these kind of lighting conditions or not. You just have to take your camera and start recording videos. You can pull your ISO to 1600, 3200 or even 6400.
So in the year 2014, Nikon introduced 5 new cameras. The capability of these 5 new cameras was shooting full HD movies at 60p. Now shooting movies at 60p gives us the liberty of slowing them down and giving a very creative feel to the whole video.
So you can actually create good slow motion videos and give them cinematic feel.
Definitely.
So like we can see in this video footage shot in Kerala, wherein these performers are doing a kind of martial art form, and we have really slowed down the video to give a cinematic feel to the whole film.
Right.
So while we were in the field, we shot a lot of video footages.
Right.
And it's really difficult to showcase all of them here. So what we'll do is we'll leave our viewers with some stunning compilation of videos and that will give them a brief idea what Nikon DSLRs can do in terms of recording videos. But I would like to inform to all our viewers that whatever tutorial series you are seeing right now, it's all been shot using Nikon DSLRs. So you have a look at this small video compilation and we'll be back pretty soon. Until next time, this is your Nikon buddy Abhishek and Aman signing off. Hello everyone, welcome to this episode on landscape photography. I am Abhishek and I have Naveen, my colleague from Nikon India technical team.
Hi Abhishek.
Hello Naveen. Just to define landscape photography for our viewers, what do you have to say?
I think the ideal definition for landscape photography would be wherein in your picture the landscape is the main subject. Now there might as well be other elements like human elements or architectural structures, but all of that should convey your picture to a major landscape or how important the landscape is in the picture.
But I believe the best way to demonstrate landscape photography is not inside these four walls of studio.
Definitely not.
So what do you think, we shall move out in the field and help our viewers understand how to pull out beautiful landscape images?
Sounds like a brilliant idea, but I would love to know where we are headed to.
We are heading towards Kerala,
God's own country.
God's own country. So let's move out
Let's do
and
that,
do
absolutely.
some real shooting. So Naveen, finally we have chosen this location for our practical demonstration of aesthetics of landscape photography.
So just to tell you about the place, this is in Kerala. We are at a small hill town called Kumili, as you can see. Now the reason why we majorly chose this location was for the layers that we get. As you can see, it's mountains behind one another.
Most of the people who want to get into landscape photography, they normally avoid taking tripods.
Correct, yeah.
Because it's painful to carry
Exactly.
tripod everywhere. But having a sturdy tripod for landscape shot is very, very important.
It's a must, in fact.
Yeah. Also, one more thing I want to clarify to our viewers, that in windy situation, in order to stabilize your camera, you just need to wrap this strap and fix it somewhere so that it doesn't move. What about lenses?
Usually one has this perception that, ultra wide include everything, and that's landscape photography.
The key ingredients of landscape photography is foreground, midground and background.
Yeah.
So as you can see, we have grass in the foreground along with that tree in the corner. Then in the midground we have these layers of mountains, and in the background we have dramatic sky. Now the major challenge that most of the people who are into landscape photography or want to learn landscape photography is where to focus.
Usually when we shoot landscape, we look for a larger depth of field, wherein we want everything in focus. Like you can see here, we have a foreground, midground and background. So we want all these three layers to be in sharp focus.
Right.
Now always remember that your depth of field is largely dependent on what aperture you're using, your focal length and your focus point. Understand that your area of focus or your depth of field is centered around the focus point. So let's say when we talk about hyperfocal distance, let's assume I'm pointing or I'm placing my focus point on the tree over here. So at hyperfocal distance, ideally I'm getting sharpness 2/3 ahead of the tree and 1/3 towards the camera.
Right.
So that much of area will be in sharp focus. So as in any other genres of photography, landscape also has to be composed well. So the most common rule of composition being the rule of thirds, where you divide your frame into 3 equal parts, horizontally and vertically. That will give you your intersection point.
So it's like divide your whole frame into 9 columns.
Exactly.
And place
exactly.
some of the interesting element in one of the intersection
Exactly.
points.
Where the lines are actually joining, those are your point of interest, as we call it.
So
Let's try.
here we are setting our camera at f16 ISO. Let me keep, as per the lighting condition, 125, and then I set my shutter speed right. White balance, we are using daylight because sun is peeping out every now and then. Let's take a shot. Let's try it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That looks nice.
So you have dramatic sky and beautiful tree in the corner and balanced by this mountain.
Also, if you notice in this picture, the horizon is not exactly in the center, as in the horizon should never divide your frame exactly through the middle.
Why don't we take our viewers to some other location and try out different other rules of composition when it comes to landscape photography?
Let's take a walk around.
Yeah. So Naveen, we are here now at a different location to talk about another rule of composition, which is called layering. And when we talk about layering, zooming into your landscape shot means you're adding layers. So in this shot, if you see, the first layer is this mountain.
Yeah.
The second layer is the house, which is the key element in this shot, and then
And
the
then again
background,
the background,
with the
yeah.
sky and a little bit of clouds.
Right.
And see where we have kept the house in this particular image, right
The
in the
point of
corner.
interest, remember?
Yeah. So I think zoom lenses can also be used as much as wide angle lenses
Yeah.
for landscape
In fact,
photography.
zoom lens compresses your
Yeah,
layers.
zoom lens tends to compress your background and gives you more depth when it comes to landscape photography. So if you've been into using a lot of wide angle lenses for landscape photography, try using zooms.
Okay, Abhishek, so here we are at a different location. Now, as you can see, the light is of course different from here.
Right.
It's diffuse,
And clarity is very good.
Exactly.
So it's a, you can say, a apt location for landscape photography.
Right.
And we have chosen this location in the middle of a tea estate.
Yeah.
Reason being, today we are talking about another important rule of composition when it comes to landscape photography, which is called leading lines.
Correct.
So, and for leading lines, we have to have a pattern or a shape which leads you towards the subject or away from the subject.
Exactly. Alright, so as you can see, right now what we are using here is a Nikon D3300 and the lens is a 10-24, which is an ultra wide. This can get you beautiful landscape images. So let's try shooting with this. So yeah, that's one more tip for our viewers. Don't make your line travel exactly through the center. Make it start from one corner so that it travels through the, to the other corner of the image. Wow, that's nice.
So as you can see, this path is leading you into the image, and there are so many converging lines coming from the top, left top of the hill, and then right hand side, you can see, and they are all colliding with each other and intersecting at the background.
Exactly.
Let's see if we add life into it to create more drama in a landscape shot. So that we'll try now. So here we have Kanchan with us from Delhi. She's a professional model, and with the help of Kanchan, we will try and establish how life can be added in your landscape shots.
Yes.
It is very important that now we switch our focusing mode from AFS to AFC, because now she is walking, so it is very important to track focus on her. That will lock on focus onto her and we can get sharp shots. Also, please note, earlier our ISO was little on a lower side to keep the quality intact, but now we'll have to boost our ISO depending on the lighting condition, and since we have increased the shutter speed, so to keep the exposure balanced, it is very important to increase the ISO as well.
Exactly.
Okay, Kanchan, action! So it's not necessary that every time you need to get a female model to add value to a landscape shot.
In fact, I believe adding your own family members, two reasons: they are cheaper and they appear a lot more natural in your frame because they know who's shooting you.
The only thing that I want to advise, that if you want to include your friends, relatives, family members as a human element and adding life to a landscape shot, ask them not to pose for you.
Exactly.
Like standing like this and just looking into the camera, those shots are very boring.
Yeah.
Ask them to do something, some activity, moving around, having fun, enjoying the scenery, the valley, landscape.
Exploring the place.
Exactly, that adds more natural touch to your landscape shots.
Absolutely.
And give you more beautiful, lively shots. Here we are at the sand dunes of Jaisalmer, Thar Desert. Just to add different flavor to landscape photography, what we are trying to achieve today is shooting at a beautiful light. It's right now 7 o'clock in the morning, and we deliberately wanted to shoot the sand dunes in this light because that golden light reflection comes really beautifully from the sand. And the idea here is to shoot the sunrise, keeping sun in one corner as per the rule of thirds. Along with that, we will try and accommodate some balancing element. Right now what I see in front of me, in the foreground sand dunes, then in the midground sand dunes, and then we have a beautiful landscape at the background in the horizon with the sun rising up. As you can see, the light falling onto my face, it is pretty golden and nice light for landscape photography. Now let's see how the shot comes. So I'll be shooting right now in manual mode, keeping my aperture close to f16 because I want to give sun that starburst kind of effect, and my shutter speed is close to 400. Remember one thing, when you are shooting sand dunes, the good time to shoot sand dunes is either early in the morning before the sun breaks and late in the evening, because what happens is when you see the ripples on these dunes, they form beautiful shadows and patterns which looks beautiful in this kind of lighting condition. Afternoon, if you come here, the light will be pretty flat, there won't be much shadows and contrast on the dunes, so it won't add up to your landscape image. So let's take one shot as per rule of thirds, keeping sun in the left hand side of the corner, and take one shot. Let's see how it comes, and then we'll try and play around with certain more angles here, and if possible we'll try and accommodate certain balancing element into it. So we actually got some pretty nice images here with the camel creating balancing element for us for the landscape image. And let's go back to the studio and review the images. So Naveen, here we are back to our studio.
Yeah.
So how was the shoot?
Abhishek, I have to say it was an amazing shoot. We had a wonderful time shooting, and like you already saw in the video, we had to tackle some dramatic climates because it kept changing all the time. So was the light, in fact.
Exactly.
It was magical, as well as sometime we had sort of dull light.
Though we were in certain location we were into hills.
Right.
So, though we did our homework pretty well in terms of studying the weather, but a good landscape photographer should be always ready for bad weather as well. So Naveen, let's review the first image that we took in Kerala.
Let's do that, yeah.
Here is the image. And what we did here is we actually implemented one of the rules of photography, which is called rule of thirds. So here you can see a tree in the right corner of the frame kept exactly on one of the intersection points as per the rule of third, and then we tried our best to accommodate three important elements of landscape photography, that is foreground, midground and background. When you talk about landscape photography, it's always about greater depth of field.
Absolutely.
And greater depth of field, one tip that I can give to all our viewers is keep your aperture above f8 to get good depth in your shot.
Yeah.
And try, if you're confused related to focusing, where to focus on some interesting foreground element. Like in this case, tree is a very good foreground element.
Exactly.
So focus there, keeping your aperture like f8, f11 will give you greater depth of field and sharpness in your landscape image.
Absolutely.
If you see another image that we shot using a zoom lens, you can see a house in the corner of the frame, right corner of the frame, perfectly placed as per the rule of third on one of the intersection point, and then you get layers of mountain with background as dramatic sky.
And with the tele lens, as you can see, the layers have also got compressed.
So here we have used a zoom lens, and with the help of zoom lens we are able to pull out another rule of landscape photography, which is called layers. So here we are showing layers in terms of one layer of mountain, second layer of mountain, and in the background we have dramatic sky. So Naveen, that was all about how you can implement rule of thirds and layers in your landscape photography. Let's review another image that we shot in one of the tea state in Kerala, keeping leading lines in mind. Now leading lines is one of the rules of photography that adds depth to your image. You shoot roads, paths, streets, railings, walls, and these kind of patterns in such a manner that either that leads you towards the subject or away from the subject.
Yeah.
So the idea here is, since photography is a two-dimensional medium, as you can see this image, when a viewer watches this particular image, he will be moved into the image.
Absolutely.
So
That's
it
what
kind
the
of
line
add,
does in the image.
exactly, it's
Yeah.
kind of add depth to your image, and it is very important to find out these kind of patterns when you are exploring the landscape.
Also, anytime you find such leading lines, place them in your picture so that it travels from one corner into the other. Try not using them parallel, because again your sense of
Right.
depth is lost if it's just parallel lines.
Right.
So that makes it all the more effective.
Exactly. So this is one image. Now this is a very ordinary looking landscape
There's still
image.
something missing in the image,
Yeah.
don't you feel that?
Landscape image, Naveen, looks very beautiful if you add life to them. Let's review another image.
Yeah.
The same spot,
Same.
and we have just added human element to it.
Right.
Now adding human element adds much more life to your landscape shots. Now see, the previous shot is looking quite flat. Yes,
Yeah.
it has got depth in it, but adding human element adds much more drama to your image.
Yeah,
and
as
life.
you can already see in the image.
Exactly.
I know that you guys had been to Jaisalmer too, so I can't wait to see your pictures there. Unfortunately, I missed it, but
Yeah, that's a kind of perfect spot, I can say.
Yeah.
A good location for landscape photography with life.
how different was it? I mean, we are straight away heading from Kerala to sand dunes. I mean, green to brown. So, light conditions, anything that you can tell us about?
See, lighting condition is quite different from Kerala, because in Kerala we encountered a lot of fog
Yeah.
and cloudy weather.
Correct.
But here sky was pretty much clear, and early in the morning and late in the evening we were getting good golden light. So here is a shot you can see of just the landscape early in the morning at around 6:30, 7 o'clock in
Look
the
at
morning.
the light.
So exactly, and what I have done here is, since there was nothing great in the foreground, so I have just kept the dunes, sand dunes in the foreground, and in the background there is beautiful sunrise happening, and I have kept the sun as per the rule of thirds. But you know, again sticking to the basic elements of landscape photography: foreground, midground, and background. Here you can see interesting foreground and interesting background, but there is nothing in the midground.
Life again. Is
Again
also
live.
missing.
So what I did, I waited there patiently, and after some time I see this.
Wow. Okay.
So you can see some local element of that particular region
Yeah.
adding life to my landscape shot.
We can't always afford to hire a model for landscape,
Exactly.
can we?
So this is a good example of how you can actually include life in your landscape images. And keep in mind, as Naveen said, you cannot have models everywhere. So use your friends, family members, relatives. Don't ask them to pose, but to enjoy the scene, and that way you can actually pull out beautiful landscape image with life.
Yeah.
So here in Jaisalmer, I was pretty much fortunate to get this kind of element for my landscape photography, and I think this has come out really well.
Absolutely. Yes.
And shooting sand dunes is also one big challenge.
Okay.
You cannot shoot sand dunes in afternoon.
Right.
The best
Because the
light
sun
is
is
early
up.
in the morning and late
Yeah.
in the evening, wherein it forms beautiful shadows onto the patterns of the dunes.
Right, right.
So keep that in mind, that every region has its own essence that needs to be captured in a particular lighting condition only.
Like the tea estate had a sort of pattern. It was actually looking like a green carpet.
Exactly.
So I'm guessing same was the case in Jaisalmer with sand.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's leave you with some more pictures from this shoot. Till next time, we are your Nikon buddies, Abhishek and Naveen, signing off.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode on travel photography. I'm Abhishek and I have with me my colleague Anindo from Nikon India technical team.
Hi Abhishek.
Hello Anindo. And today both of us will help you understand how to approach travel photography. Anindo, we receive a lot of queries from photography enthusiasts and they normally ask one question: what should be my camera settings?
Right. This is the common question that we get from everyone.
Right.
People who are traveling, they want one setting so that they can use that setting all through their travel locations.
Exactly.
But that does not happen because wherever you're traveling, the light is different, the landscaping is different, and the people there are also wearing different colorful clothes.
I personally believe that if you research on a particular location, for example, if I'm traveling to say Ladakh, Ladakh is known for its landscapes. So I won't forget to carry at least one wide angle lens to cover the massive landscape of Ladakh.
And apart from lenses, there are many other things to keep in mind. Like there is accessories, which is also a major part, and we need to know what accessories to carry.
Having a good backpack is also important. A DSLR bag which can accommodate like one body, couple of lenses, your battery chargers and filters, everything. I would also suggest that if in case you are at a region wherein flash is not allowed, like we went to Ladakh and there was a place wherein a lot of ancient paintings were there, but flash was not allowed. You go to certain historical caves like Ajanta, Ellora, the flash is not allowed there.
Right.
So in those kind of scenarios, to illuminate that, I would recommend you can use a handy torch light or a LED torch to illuminate the subject.
Yeah, that's a very good tip, I would say.
A lot of people get into more technicalities on how to use a DSLR.
Right.
And they, of course, a good image is something which is technically sound, but also keep in mind a good image is something which also tells a story. So being technically right, I mean your exposure should be well, your image should be in focus and sharp with proper white balance and colors. But along with that, one should not forget the aesthetics and creative part of photography, that is composition. And when we talk about composition, then you have to keep in mind all the rules of photography like rule of thirds, balancing elements, layers, leading lines into the frame. These are all rules of photography. So all these rules should be kept in mind before you actually approach travel photography. And I would also suggest to all our viewers that when you are traveling, when you start from your home, start logging images, start taking images. By the end of your tour, you would be able to link all those images together and create a beautiful photo story out of it.
So all this information that was shared, I would like to utilize that on a weekend trip to Jaisalmer.
Jaisalmer sounds very interesting, Anando. I believe we have sand dunes, we have historical monuments there, palaces, and a lot of culture, Rajasthani culture. That means a lot of colors.
Right.
I think that's an ideal place for travel photography.
Exactly. So I have planned that I'll go around the city and go to some of the remote locations so that I can capture the architecture.
For all our viewers, what I'll be doing, I would love to share some on-field tips with them, how to document that.
Okay, that will be very interesting and very different approach towards travel photography.
Right. And meanwhile, you cover the monuments, architecture and street.
I think that's a great idea. So what are we waiting for? Let's go.
Let's go. So here we are on the field to demonstrate some travel photography tips and techniques. Right now, as you can see, sun is pretty hard, light is very hard, but by the time we travel to our location, I think light will become a lot more softer and we'll have pretty golden light to cover a lot of elements that needs to be included in travel log in terms of travel photography. So let's move to our locations. Anindo is moving to a different location and I'm moving to the fort area to cover some other elements. Let's see how it comes.
After a short ride, we have now come to Kuldra. It was once a well-settled village, but now it has turned into ruins, and that's what the attraction over here is. We have come at a place which has dynamic light, and you see around the light which is falling on the walls, it is bringing the texture out. So this is what we want when we go to any other place like this. We want the texture, we want the feel of the place, and this gives us that particular look when we come at the right moment. as I was talking about the lens utility, you can see I have a wide angle view and scene here. So first I'll take a shot on 24mm so that I can show you what the image looks like. So I'm taking a shot at 24mm which will cover a lot of ground and lot of area, and it will give me a feel of the place. But as you can see, there is also a portrait subject available. So since I have a 24 to 120mm lens, I'll put it to 120mm so that I can shoot a portrait also if I want. So this is the utility of such lenses, and this is how you can have a variable focal length lens which will do more justice and it is more easier to carry around. We are now on our way to Bada Bagh, which is the Royal Cemetery. Here the interesting part is that there are no tombstones present. All the tombstones have been turned into an umbrella shape.
So as we are heading towards our location, just few quick tips regarding travel photography. Always shoot in RAW, because when you are shooting in RAW, that gives you a lot of liberty to actually refine your images further if they are underexposed, overexposed, and you can even correct the white balance. So keep the RAW format always on in your camera when you are doing professional level of photography. So here we are pretty close to the fort, which is Jaisalmer Fort. We'll be heading inside the fort to capture the local essence of Jaisalmer and the region. And as you can see, light falling onto me is in a particular angle. So this is pretty decent light to capture this area right now. And to further enhance the saturation in the sky and to make it much more bluer, I'm using a CPL filter, 77mm. Right now the gear that I am using is Nikon D810 along with 2470. Why 2470? Because I want to shoot various perspectives of this location, grab some zoom in shot of the fort, and let's see how it comes. Okay, so here we have managed to pull out pretty decent images of the fort along with the city. So what I have done is I have kept the fort in the right hand side of my frame as per rule of third, balanced by the patch of cloud you can see in the sky. Keep in mind that always shoot at various focal length. You never know what focal length will give you a wonderful shot.
We have stopped just before this and we found this temple. So this structure is very nice, and through this we can see the same architecture and we can have a picture that is not the original or the normal pictures that we get to see on the internet. So this is how you can change your point of view to make better images every time. Right now, as you can see, the light is very directional. It is falling right on the architecture here and it is illuminating the subject very nicely. So we are shooting on aperture priority mode. I have selected an aperture of f14 so that I can achieve a greater depth of field and we can see till the end. So this is very important as there are no movement happening here and it is an architecture, so we can easily shoot on aperture priority mode.
We are here inside the fort and there are a lot of activities happening, and we have my friend Pia with us and she's here to visit the fort. So today she'll help me to demonstrate you all how we can take candid pictures of your friends and relatives while you are traveling with them. I have D750 mounted with 7200mm and I have D810 with 2470 so that I don't miss any perspective and don't waste time in changing the lenses. Okay, keep in mind that whenever you are doing travel photography, it is very important that you click mix of type portraits along with that certain environmental portraits, because those environmental portraits will establish the location. Right now we are at a restaurant which is situated on a hilltop wherein you can see the aerial view of the whole city, and Pia is just busy clicking some aerial shots of the city. Let's see what I can get here.
In travel photography, you'll have to be very aware of the timings of sunrise and sunset, because that is the time that you want to utilize for your travel photographs, because there you'll see the dynamism of the landscape, you'll see the architecture coming out very nicely, and we want the maximum colors to be in the sky. Like right now, if you see behind me, the sun is at the edge on the horizon, and you see the clouds, the patterns, the colors. The only thing that you need to be very careful here is your white balance. You'll have to understand the white balance and change it accordingly, so that you get the perfect light and the perfect sky and the drama that is happening right now. So we got this information from a local photographer, and he curated this way before coming here. That is what you need to do for your travel photography also.
The best time to do travel photography is early in the morning or late in the evening. That's when the drama starts. If you can pull out images during that time, those will be little different from what you have been seeing of that particular landmark, monument or valley or scenery, whatever you've been to. So I'm done with the shoot here inside the fort area. I'm just waiting for Anindo to see what shots Anindo has got. So once Anindo is there, we'll head for another location wherein we'll be shooting another element of travel photography, especially for which Rajasthan is famous for. Hi Anindo.
Hey Abhishek.
How was the shoot?
Very nice. How was yours?
Long and tiring, but we managed to pull out some great images. How about you?
Same here also. We managed to go to 3 different places. Wherever we went, we found the symmetry, patterns, and the light was in our favor today. So we were able to take out very nice images.
Oh, show me the images.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, great.
Place
Awesome.
that we went. The light was brilliant. It was falling from an angle and created the symmetry very nicely.
Me and Anindo will now move back to our hotel, wherein we have different, as I said, dimension that will add a lot of drama to our travel photography. So Anindo, here we are. Today was a tiring day and we managed to pull out some beautiful images for our travel log. Right. But this is what I think me and you were waiting for, to capture the cultural essence of this place, Rajasthan. And today we have beautiful performers who will be performing for us the regional folk dance, and they'll be singing. And to capture that, what I am using right now is D750 mounted with 85mm 1.4 prime. So we can really widen up the aperture, get shallow depth of field, beautiful bouquets in the background. Since this whole performance will be very dynamic, wherein people will be at times static and then start moving and start performing. In these kind of situations, try and keep your release mode at continuous high. So as this camera D750 is capable of shooting at 6.5 fps, and my focusing mode will be AFA instead of AFS or AFC, because AFA gives me the liberty to switch between AFS and AFC pretty frequently, because it's a combination of both the focusing mode. Keep a steady shutter speed, a standard shutter speed of at least 1/60, and depending on the subject movement you can further raise the shutter speed. And ISO, don't hesitate in boosting the ISO to 1600 or even to 3200, because as I said, today's Nikon camera systems are capable enough to handle higher ISO performance. So let's begin this shoot. Okay. So Anindo, did you manage to get some good shots here?
Yeah, I think the settings that we decided worked pretty well, and we got the motion as well as we freeze the frame also.
Yeah, of course. Whatever images we have shot for our viewers, go back to studio, review the images, share some more tips and techniques regarding travel photography. Today we've got a lot of images in various kind of conditions, lighting conditions, and a lot of elements we shot which are important for any travel log. So Anindo, here we are back to our studio.
Yeah.
I think we managed to pull out pretty decent images from Rajasthan and Jaisalmer, right?
Yeah, right.
I would first like to review a couple of images that I took, keeping in mind how one can shoot your friends and family members when you're traveling along with them. So as you can see from these set of images, here Pia is just busy clicking images with her own Coolpix A camera, and I am just capturing some candid moments like a photojournalist.
This does not look posed at all.
You can see in this image she's shopping there, and then she's just reviewing the images. So what do you think about these images?
I think they're wonderful. By looking at them, you see the environment and you see everything happening around them. It's not a posed image, it looks very natural and appealing to one. These are the images that I shot during our trip to Jaisalmer. What happened, I picked out some of the locations which were different and unique. I wanted to go to 3 or 4 locations so that I have a good set of images from there. And as you can see, this image talks about the modern along with the old. So I shot this, as you can see on the left hand side there is this architecture, and on the right are the windmill. So both come together, an appealing image.
As you can see, this shot is of Jaisalmer Fort, and it's kind of symbolic shot of Jaisalmer. Anybody who knows the area a little bit can see this image and identify, yes, we are talking about Jaisalmer.
Right.
But apart from that, my idea was how I can add life to this image. So what I did was I just shifted my attention towards these children who were just flying kites, and I kept the monument in the background and them in the foreground.
Came out a very nice image. You can see this has been taken from a vantage point which is not the normal view.
Exactly. So I think one should always eye for adding life to the image by incorporating such kind of elements in your photograph.
Okay.
We have clicked a lot of images.
Exactly.
Right? And it is very difficult to review all of them at this platform within this limited time.
Right.
But what we do is we have created a beautiful travel log for all our viewers, and we leave them with this travel log, and hopefully I think we have shared good amount of tips with them on how to approach travel photography.
Yeah, exactly.
So let them have a look at this travel log. Until next time, these are the Nikon buddies Abhishek and Anindo signing off.
Hello everyone and welcome to this session of Candid Photography. I'm Rohan and I have with me my colleague Aman from the Nikon India technical team. So Aman, we are talking about candid photography. For our viewers, could you explain what is candid photography?
Well, Rohan, candid photography is when your subject is unaware about your presence, that you are clicking their picture. What candid photography does, it is able to capture the real essence and emotion of the subject. Now, for example, when you are asking someone to say cheese, you're in fact asking them to pose for you. Now just imagine if you're just shooting them candidly, you're able to capture their natural expressions, which is far much more better in comparison to a posed shot.
Yes, quite true. Though, sometimes posed shots also work, but to capture the essence of the moment, to get the real feeling, the real expression on someone's face is definitely great. That is what candid photography deals with. So Aman, to explain candid photography better to our viewers, I think it can be categorized into a few other sections where we can approach this in a much better way. What do you think those sections would be?
Well, Rohan, we can categorize it into two different ways. One is your journalistic approach and another is your directorial approach. So in the journalistic approach, which is more like a street photography thing, where you are just moving out of your space and walking on a road, you're going to the market, and you're just shooting as and when what you see something amazing.
So your subject is completely unawares, and you just, like we said before, that grab the essence, grab that little movement, that little expression on his face, probably in a marketplace where there's money exchanging hands.
Absolutely.
Somebody doing some kind of a transaction.
Right.
And maybe another
Somebody pointing somewhere.
Correct. Or maybe just a tourist at a architectural monument or something, trying to take a picture of the monument.
Absolutely.
Such situations where people are actually not aware. That's what your candid approach in the journalistic way is.
Right.
Okay. How would you define directorial approach?
Well, Rohan, directorial approach is in a more controlled environment where you're asking your subjects to pose in a manner, but the final result is more in a candid way.
Okay. So for our viewers, the directorial approach is a more controlled environment. You have much more control in your hands. So, I think we should share another tip for our viewers here, that whenever they want to, do candid photography the directorial way, they should, have a good rapport building session with the people that they're about to shoot.
Absolutely.
And this goes out specially for people who are interested in, candid and wedding photography, and where they use mostly the directorial approach.
Absolutely, Rohan. Nowadays, this trend of candid photography is picking up a lot, and the youngsters which are getting married day to day, they really want their pictures not to be the ones which their parents like, the ones which were like post ones,
ways,
right?
Yeah.
And they want it to be shot in a candid way, that they go out to some parks, they go out to some monuments, and get their shots done.
So they're just meeting each other, they're just walking around, and as a couple would do.
Definitely.
And the photographer just becomes invisible and captures those moments.
Right.
Though he's telling them in compositionally how they should walk or where they should be.
Yep.
But the final result comes out as if they have not been posed.
Yeah, that is what is all about the controlled environment.
So I think for people who like to do candid photography with a more controlled environment, the directorial approach is the way to go.
Definitely.
And just for our viewers, before you go in and actually do the shoot, we would suggest doing a lot of homework. By homework I mean look at reference shots of other photographers, and look at their work, get ideas, and that just helps you build a nice memory bank.
Right.
And when you're actually on the field, helps you take some good pictures.
Yeah. You're not in fact copying them, you're just trying to get the same essence in the pictures.
Yes, like I said, have a good memory bank of nice pictures in your mind, so that when you're working on the field, you get better compositions and you get better looking images for your clients or for your loved ones, family, anybody who's getting married in your family, or even if you just wanted great pictures. So I want to demonstrate the directorial as well as the journalistic approach towards candid photography. Let us head out and get some images.
Absolutely.
And for our viewers, we'll be telling you what gear we are using and what kind of settings we have on our camera depending on the light and the environment on the go.
Right.
So let's head out and get some great images.
Let's go.
So Aman, it's been a rainy morning, and we've been waiting for the skies to open up a little bit. But for our viewers, hi, we are here in Kerala today, in Kumarakam, and like we spoken to you about, the different types of candid photography we do. There is a directorial approach and then a journalistic approach. This is a bustling market, and let's see what produce we have today here.
Let's go. Why not do one thing?
Yeah.
You take this approach, I'll take another approach. Let's see what we get.
All right. All the best, Aman, then.
All right. See ya.
So now, as you all can see, this is a fish market, and everything around here is very, it's colorful, it's bustling. There's a lot of transactions happening in the market. So this is the kind of environment where candid photography comes out really nice. See, there are different kinds of expression. There is money changing hands. There are transactions happening. There's a lot to be captured here. just so that you know what kind of gear I'm using today, I have a D750 with a 70-200 lens mounted. Why I've chosen a longer focal length is because I do not want to be spotted by the people while I'm actually taking these pictures, because that will kind of, influence them on looking towards the camera. That is one thing we are not really looking forward to when we are doing candid photography, because we want to capture the real moments here, the real expressions. So we will try and go ahead and look into, how the scene moves and what kind of activity is happening here, and try and capture that. Most of the time, you do use a longer focal length to stay, keep people not concentrating on you, or do not, try to stay off their radars so that they don't look at you and get aware. However, at other times when you need to get in close and you need a wider angle, you can shift your lenses, maybe use a 24-70 or a wider focal length, a lens like I'm using a D30-300 camera here with an 18-140 lens. What this will give me is a wider perspective, a wider angle to capture this, this movement, this whole scene over here, what the fish market in the morning actually looks like. This is not the angle that I'm looking for right now. Okay, so if you just saw what happened here, I'm trying to take a picture of a lady and she refused. So because she saw a big camera in my hand and probably didn't want her picture clicked. Certain times when things like this happen, you have to respect the other person's privacy and move on. Never mind, maybe we'll get another shot, or maybe from a different angle we can grab another shot, but at the moment let's go from here and go ahead and see what we have. So I'm going to try and take some shots here, and that is just, those shots are going to show you and describe what the market is today this morning. I think I've got a few nice shots here. So it's been a fruitful morning so far. Let's go ahead and see what Aman's been doing and find out if he's been able to get some nice shots.
As Rohan is shooting in a fish market, we've come to another market over here. And as I can see, we've got a lot of colors over here because of the vegetables and fruits. Plus there's some clothes market as well. Now our main aim here is to capture different aspects of street life. Let's see how it goes. Let's continue. A lot of different aspects which we need to cover. So firstly, what I would like to tell you is, like, shooting in such an environment, you would need to shoot in either in A mode or P mode. Why would I choose an A mode is because I want to take care of my depth of field, and I can control what elements I want in my frame and what elements I want defocused. Let's see. We'll try to take some shots and explain it. It's always nice to interact with the localites, and they also feel nice. You should always be polite and should always be thankful to them, and they'll give you nice expressions at times, because candid is not only about capturing moments where people are not aware. It's also about getting those light-hearted moments as well. Yeah, thank you. There was a transaction which was happening between two people, and I was able to capture that. This is one of those things which you need to capture while you're shooting street.
Hi Aman.
Hey Rohan.
How did it go for you?
Great, yeah. How about you?
Very good. Did you manage to get some good shots?
Oh, definitely. I did pull out some good shots. So what?
Wonderful. Even me, though the weather is like this, but I managed to get some great shots.
Great.
So let's do one thing. Since we've already spoken about the journalistic view of, way of taking pictures, candid pictures.
Right.
Let's go to another location where we can talk about the directorial way.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Let's go.
Yeah. So guys, we already spoke about the journalistic approach towards candid photography. Here we are now on a houseboat, and we'd be talking about the directorial approach towards candid photography. So to demonstrate this, we have Jay and we have Kanchan on board. Guys, if you could join us. Hi, Jay. So, Kanchan and Jay, as you know, we are talking about the directorial approach towards photography. I'm sure we'll be able to take some really nice images.
Okay, guys, just relax, be yourselves, don't worry about anything. You don't really need to pose, just talk to each other and be comfortable. All right. Yeah, that's a nice one.
So Aman, since we've been getting some brilliant shots, just for our viewers, if you could tell them, looking at the light right now, what the settings are, what kind of a camera or lens are you using?
All right. So as far as the settings are concerned, as of now, I have the shutter speed at 1/500th of a second. My f-stop is 4.5 and my ISO is about 1/60th. Okay guys, if you could just move on to this position. All right, and you, Jay, just put your arm around her. All right, your right one, and Kanchan, if you could just bend your back a little bit, it'll give you a better posture. All right.
So if you see what Aman's doing, he's taking pictures and he's just left our models to actually talk to each other, and he's just moved them a little bit so that there is better light on them. So like we said, this is the directorial approach towards candid photography. Now it may seem a little staged to you, but over here we're trying to demonstrate how you can actually, in situations where it's your family, friends, or you're on a vacation, or maybe there's a event or a ceremony or celebrations at home, you can do such things and get amazing pictures. So this approach towards candid photography is really nice. All you have to keep in mind is the light, the direction of light, where it is coming from, a few camera settings, and you can make amazing pictures. It is very important that we do this exercise, because while you're taking pictures, you should always show how the pictures are coming out to your subject or your models, or if you're shooting your family members or friends, you should always share images with them, because that shows them how they're looking on the screen or how they're looking in the picture, which helps them to be a little conscious and give you better poses, or maybe give you better pictures. So Aman, how was your shoot today?
Oh, it was great. We got some great shots, and I would love to get back and start reviewing them for our viewers soon.
Wonderful. So yes, today we had a brilliant day shooting. It was outdoors. We also managed to get ourselves on a houseboat and click in this lovely scene today. So we've covered the directorial approach of candid photography, also the journalistic approach of candid photography. What we'd like to do now is head back to the studio, review some images and share some amazing tips with you guys, so that you can go ahead and go out and explore this genre of photography for yourselves. So Aman, here we are back in the studio after a great shoot in Kerala.
Right.
And we were able to grab images for both the directorial as well as journalistic approach towards candid photography.
Absolutely.
So why don't we review the images?
Right.
Aman, let's review this first image.
Wow, Rohan, this is a great capture at the fish market.
Yeah, you can see, the fisherman is really lively and really happy to, arrange his produce early in the morning, starting his day with all that energy. I just loved, clicking this image because the expression on his face, the energy that it brought out was just very nice.
And even the cardboard which is there, it's acting like a natural reflector, emphasizing the feel of the picture furthermore.
Yeah, it technically speaking, yes, the lid of the box is reflecting some of the light back, though I didn't have that in mind, but yes, now when you point it out, it is. And the best part of this image is he's just not aware that somebody is clicking.
Right.
That's how journalistic approach of photography is. It helps you capture these little moments,
the natural expressions.
With natural expressions. Let's look at our second image.
The second image, as you can see, Rohan, I shot when I was at the vegetable market. The seller over here is trying to get the attention of the buyers over there.
I know, I can see, it's all the vegetables behind, and how he's trying to convince and give a thumbs up that, his produce is the best.
Absolutely.
Very nice expression captured here too.
Right.
Let's look at the third image. This image, another one that I shot at, the fish market. This is a very happy seller, and, people over there were very happy around. I mean, there was just too much energy. He's holding up this nice pomfret fish in his hand, and he's trying to, sell it to one of the buyers over there. It was just a very happy moment, and that conversation happening between both the buyer and the seller was just made for a very nice picture.
Yeah, it showcases how comfortable he is in his own profession and loves to do what he does.
Yeah, so I mean, such kind of images just, you know, kind of relate and tell you what the environment was like at that particular time.
Right.
So these are certain images that we've chosen for the, you know, the journalistic approach.
Right.
Let's have a look at a few images that you know, show the directorial approach towards candid photography.
Absolutely. As you can see in this next image, we have the couple placed on the boat on the farther end, and it's at the sea.
Yeah,
now,
it's just almost there at the tip of the, you know, boat.
Right.
Yeah.
They were really careful about, otherwise they would have fallen down.
Yeah, and this, though it is posed, Aman, I think, is this posed?
Well, yes, it is posed, but then again, we've shot it in a manner that it again looks candid. And even while you're shooting pictures, something which you can see over here, that the picture is a little bit darker, or we could put it in a way that it's actually a
somewhat
silhouette.
of a silhouette.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, they kind of communicate the message, the intimacy between the couple. So it looks nice. It's a great image, though there's the expanse of the, you know, the huge lake or the river that was the Kerala backwaters.
Right.
And just a brilliant image.
Okay. And in the next image, you can see it's just the opposite of the previous image. Now here the light is right onto the faces of the couple, and you get that catch light also in their eyes, and the evening light is really well, and it's forming those perfect curvatures on their faces.
So you mean to say the light is nicely wrapping around their faces,
Absolutely.
nice hair light,
Absolutely.
and there's that golden hour, so you've got that light very nicely, and it, you know, just the light and just the ambience of the whole scene brings in the warmth.
Right.
So, you know, another tip for all the, you know, people who like to click wedding pictures, pre-post-wedding shoots and all, like I mentioned before, build a rapport. Over here also, Aman directed these people to, you know, be in a certain place, pose a certain way, turn a certain direction, but the end result comes out really nice.
Right.
So this is how we can actually, you know, direct people, tell people what to do and get natural pictures.
Yeah, and also while we're doing that, we can show those images to them. That gives them the motivation to do much more better, and they're able to gain more confidence. Right?
Yes, yes, because they're seeing the image, they know what you want actually, and they can relate to it better and give you a great image.
Absolutely.
So that is all for this session of Candid Photography. We were able to cover both the directorial as well as the journalistic approach towards candid photography and review a few images.
Absolutely.
Though we did review only a few images with our viewers, but we leave you with a collection of images that we collected during our trip.
Right.
And until the next time, these are your Nikon buddies, Rohan and Aman, signing off.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode on portrait photography. I am Abhishek and I have with me my colleague Vinay from Nikon India technical team, and together we'll be helping you out in understanding some basic tips and techniques on portrait photography. Right, Vinay?
Yes, Abhishek, we'll try to help our users to shoot better portrait images in keeping certain things in their mind.
Okay, what happens normally, Vinay, is that when we approach portrait photography, we are normally involved into camera settings and what ISO one should keep, what shutter speed, what aperture. Okay, that is all important, but we tend to forget one important element, that is light. So for portrait photography, it is very important that you understand the direction of light and the quality of light. So Vinay, why don't we do one thing to demonstrate that? First, let's move outside, outdoors, and demonstrate our viewers how they can click beautiful images in different kind of lighting conditions and how they can actually mold and refine the quality of light while clicking portraits.
I guess that would be a wonderful idea, because in studio it's not better. We'll go outside and we'll shoot that.
Right. So let's move outside and click some beautiful portrait images. So Vinay, here we are on the field to show some tips and techniques to our viewers and to demonstrate them how you can click beautiful portrait photographs. And now as you can see, sun is pretty harsh and the light is forming pretty harsh shadows onto us. You can see the shadow here, you can see the shadow, long shadow behind me. And we are here to demonstrate how you can tackle and pull out beautiful portrait shot in even this kind of harsh lighting conditions. But to do that, it is very important. First step, look out for shade. Here we have Tridisha with us to help us demonstrate to all our viewers how we can pull out beautiful portrait shot in this kind of harsh lighting condition. Right now she is in shade. As we mentioned that we are looking out for shade, so we got the right place. Before we do that, one thing that you must keep in mind is the background. So right now harsh light is spread all across the place, and it's a deserted area wherein light is bouncing on from the earth also, so you might overexpose the shot. So keep in mind your background should be something which can separate the subject totally. So right now I'm keeping that tree in the background, and then I'll be taking a couple of portrait shots of Tridisha. And meanwhile my friend Vinay will prepare for a small demonstration what if you don't find shade in the environment. So Vinay, you move on and prepare for that, and I'll take a couple of her shots.
Sure, carry on. A group shot.
Okay, before we start taking the portrait shot of Tridisha, let me tell you, your exposure mode should be A. It's aperture priority auto mode, and this mode is to initially start off before you jump on to manual mode. Aperture priority mode is something that gives you a lot of liberty to play around with background. So what I'm doing right now is I'm using Nikon D5300 with 18-140mm lens. Now, you know, while shooting portraits, it's been a trend these days that if you get a shallow depth of field, that gives more cinematic look to your portrait shots. So that's what I'm trying right now. To do that, you have to really pull up your focal length to the fullest, whatever your lens support. Right now I have 18-140, so I'm shooting at 140mm zoom. And along with that, keep in mind your distance, your subject distance from the camera and your subject distance from the background also matters if you want that shallow depth of field. So right now, as you can see, background is quite far away, so I'm expecting good shallow depth of field. And as I've told you, we are shooting in aperture priority auto mode. Now to get good shallow depth of field, that was all about distance, and your aperture should be as wide as possible. So with 18-140mm, I can get close to 5.6 wide aperture, which will give me good shallow depth of field. So let me just take a couple of her shots and let's see how it comes. And as you can see, light falling onto her is pretty smooth, and see her placement. The way I have placed her is like, you can see a lot of light in this direction. So what I'm trying to do here is, I'm utilizing ground as a reflector so that a lot of light bounces onto her and I can get a decent light on her face. So portrait photography is not just you can make anywhere, stand anywhere and you can just take a shot. It's all about reading the light, and the direction of light is also very important. So let me just grab a couple of her shots. Nice. Okay. Look towards the camera, right. Ah, great. Smile, smile. Yeah, awesome. So I managed to pull out some decent shots of Tridisha here in shade. And as you remember, I spoke about background. We have chosen that background of a tree and a camp right there because light across the place is pretty harsh. So you don't want your background to overexpose. So choose a background that can separate your subject totally, and you can really enjoy that shallow depth of field. Along with that, also keep in mind that shooting in harsh lighting condition is not that easy. When you are shooting in this kind of condition, always look out for shade. Now, with the help of Tridisha, Vinay will demonstrate how you can shoot beautiful portraits even if you don't find shade. So let's look out for Vinay.
This is a place where Abhishek just shared with us, where if you look around, you don't have any shade around here, and it's a very harsh light, and you can see other side of the face of the model. It's too much of shadow, and it's very harsh shadow. Let me just take a picture and see how it comes. Yeah, model look beautiful, but my only concern is about the harsh shadow which is on the other side of the face. Let's try to add some shade to the picture. Yeah. Hi Abhishek.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's create shade.
Yes, please. A little bit down, Abhishek, just so that I get some good shadow on the hands here. Yes, that's good.
So what I'm doing here is we are actually creating shade in harsh lighting condition. If you want to buy, of course, it's your call, but you can also use a veil or something like that, a white cloth that can allow the light to pass through it. You can double fold it, tri-fold it, and you can ask somebody, assistants, to hold the veil for you or the diffuser for you to create shade.
Oh yeah, very good.
So Vinay, here we are back to our studio.
Yes.
What do you think about the shoot?
Wow, it was wonderful. We had different lighting situations and it was a wonderful outdoor experience, and I guess our users would have got a lot of tips about it.
Exactly, and Vinay, we can speak about portrait photography all day long. It's a vast topic, but that was some quick demonstration just to share with our viewers some basic tips one needs to keep in mind when you want to click beautiful portraits of your friends and family members. But as during our demonstration, we discussed about a couple of settings that you need to keep in mind. For portrait photography, it is very important. Choose the right exposure mode. One is manual mode, that gives you full control over all the settings of the camera, be it shutter speed, aperture or ISO. Another is aperture priority auto mode. Just to demonstrate these settings, I'm using D5300 camera mounted with a 1955mm lens, and you can see this camera is hooked on to the LCD TV at the background with this HDMI cable, just for our viewers to get better understanding of the settings we are doing.
Right.
Now your camera interface may vary from model to model. Right now what you see is the interface of D5300, but the basic remains the same. And when we talk about the setting, most of the people start with auto mode.
The green color auto.
Yeah, for learning purpose it's a good mode, but if you see in auto mode, most of the options are disabled. You actually don't have any control over ISO and aperture, shutter speed. Camera selects all these options automatically. But to get better control over your portrait photographs, it is very important to switch to the right exposure mode. Number one, which is called A mode, aperture priority auto mode. Now in this mode, when we talk about portrait photography is all about depth of field. Whether you want to defocus the background or bring the background in focus, which we call greater depth of field and shallow depth of field respectively. Now to do that, aperture priority auto mode is the best mode, because here you have control over aperture.
Yes.
But one thing, when you are shooting in aperture priority auto mode, keep a watch on shutter speed, because here shutter speed will be selected by the camera automatically. And if you think your shutter speed is going really down, really slow, use a tripod and ask your subject to be really still. Another mode that we want to discuss is manual mode. Manual mode is of course suited for all kind of photography, wherein you have control over all the parameters of photography, be it shutter speed, aperture, ISO and various other features of the camera. When we talk about A mode and M mode, as I told you, these are the two best modes for portrait photography. Don't forget, as we discussed, demonstrated how to mold the light as per your requirement. Right. Softer the light, better will be your portrait pictures. Now what happens in slow sync flashes, you get the foreground, the subject well illuminated, as well as background is also well illuminated. So to do that, what you need to do is, first of all, slow sync flash is disabled when you are shooting in S mode, that is shutter priority auto mode, or manual mode. So you need to switch the camera to either P mode or aperture priority mode to enable slow sync flash. Once you do that, you just pop up the flash using this flash button and then press the flash button. You will see flash icon getting highlighted on the interface, and then you need to rotate the dial and reach to slow sync flash, which is flash icon with slow written on it. Once you do that, your camera is all set to click the image. So Vinay, let's review a couple of images that we took during our outdoor session with Tridisha. This is an image that has been shot under hard sunlight. You can see hard shadows forming. And this is the image that is being shot where we molded the light and we softened the light using diffuser. Right, Vinay?
Right.
So you can see the quality of light, how it is impacting onto your portrait pictures. So these are a couple of images, and we've shot around plenty of images, and it's very difficult to review all of them. But one important tip, again we'll come to that, always look out for the quality of light when you're shooting portraits. So this was all about portrait photography. We'll be back with some more interesting sessions. Until next time, these are your Nikon buddies, Abhishek and Vinay signing off.
Hello everyone and welcome to this session of fashion photography. I'm Rohan and I have with me Vinay, my colleague from the Nikon India technical team. Hi Vinay.
Hello Rohan.
Vinay, we are here today to talk about fashion photography.
Right.
So let me ask you, what does fashion photography mean to you?
Yes, fashion photography actually excites us a lot. It's all about glamorous models, it's about too much of lights and so much of makeup and yes, exotic locations.
Yes, that word fashion does bring all those thoughts to our mind. But Vinay, let me tell you, fashion photography is a genre of photography which is very open to interpretation and extremely creative. But you know, there's a lot of behind the scenes that goes on, a lot of homework that happens. You know, there's a lot of planning in which you have selection of models, selection of the right costume, could be makeup, styling. So a whole lot of research work goes into before you actually go ahead and execute a shoot. Right. So Vinay, for the better understanding of our viewers, why don't we take them outdoors on an actual live shoot location?
Sure.
I'm very excited about today's shoot. First time I'm shooting in a desert.
The climate is like, it's so cold and everything is like, the atmosphere is so hot and people are getting ready. And
this is different, as in we are going to do our shoot in the sand dunes. It's for a brand like Nikon, so I'm really chilled out and I'm looking forward to it.
So here we are on an outdoor location for our fashion photography episode. It's a beautiful morning. It's 8 a.m. Sun is at a very nice angle. As you can see, we are in between sand dunes. This is Jaisalmer, Rajasthan, and there's a beautiful sky behind us. Today, to demonstrate the outdoor fashion photography section of our fashion photography episode, what we are doing is, if you can see at the back, there are a few models. We've gotten some professionals to help us make this episode and to demonstrate how you can get amazing high fashion images. Vinay, as you see that, you know, the sand dunes and the skies alone make a very, you know, monotonous or a barren landscape. To add a bit of splash of colors in between, what we've done is we are using a few props. We've got our models draped in some really vibrant colors that bring out the character of this place. So the gear we're using today are D750 camera and a 70-200 lens, and Vinay here has?
I have an 810 and a 24-70. I'm thinking of taking some wide angle shots.
So great. What I'll be doing is I'll be taking shots with the 70-200 mm lens so that I can isolate the subject from the background. Also, since it's a nice bright sunny day, we are using the direct sunlight white balance. Our cameras are on ISO 100 and we'll be choosing the shutter speed and aperture, say aperture about f8 to f11, and the shutter speed would depend upon the movement as we pose the models, as we direct the models.
So add to that, we'll be using a picture control standard
and let's try to increase the clarity of it. And if at all you reduce it completely, it becomes more dreamy kind of a thing. So it becomes more effective. So let's try to shoot a picture with complete clarity, and let's try to reduce it completely.
Another important tip, like we always share during our episodes, I'd like to share with our viewers is that before you think or before you execute a shoot, it's always good to do a little bit of homework. Look at some good reference images, some photographers that you follow, or some fashion magazines. Since we are doing a fashion shoot, we did also refer a few fashion magazines. This just brings and gives you references in your mind to bring out your creativity and to explore different angles, just to add to your creative skill to bring out amazing images. So that's all for now, and we'll head towards the shoot and let's see how it goes today.
Ready? Yeah, go for it. Very nice, very nice. Move your hand a little bit, yeah.
Little ahead, little ahead.
Yeah. Try a few more of those, yeah, nice. Come a little more into the sun. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's nice, that's nice. The headgear is a little too much in, on the forehead. I want it slightly pulled back, slightly. Keep going, keep going. Yeah, that's nice.
Keep moving, we'll keep shooting, okay? So Vinay, I think we had a great shoot this morning.
Yes, we did.
We tried different angles, we tried different props.
Correct.
And the beautiful morning light, we made the most of it. And now as you see that the light's gone up, the sun's gone up into the sky and it's become a little harsh, I think we'll have to give it a little break and shoot again from say about 3 or 4 in the afternoon when the light is more angular and more suitable for this kind of a fashion shoot outdoors. At our second location in Jaisalmer, a tourist spot called Kuldhara. Today, to demonstrate fashion photography, we have again a model with us. If you see in the background, we have Himakshi. As you see in the background, there's a house, there's this structure that we'll be using to do our fashion shoot today. The light is beautiful, but since we have a very short window of time to demonstrate and take beautiful pictures, let us, without further ado, go ahead and take some pictures and demonstrate how this is done. Himakshi, into the camera. Just for 1 second, open your eyes, okay? So here, as you can see, my colleague Vinay is trying to take some shots of Himakshi here. If you look, the sunlight is very nicely falling onto the model. At this time, since it's fashion photography also deals a little with directing your model, telling her how to pose, how to face into the light, the body posture. All these things are very important to keep in mind while doing fashion photography. So here I'd like to share a tip with everyone. In conditions like this, brightly lit conditions like this, and especially when your subject, model or people that you're shooting are wearing white color, whereas it reflects back a lot of light, you should take care of your highlights. one should always expose for the highlights, because once you have details in your highlights, the details in your shadow and the darker areas of your image can still be taken care of in the post. But one should always try and get the highlights right. The sun's setting down, there's a beautiful golden light. So what we are trying to do here is we have Para model stand against the sun, so that the sun provides a nice rim lighting in the hair, and we are using a reflector which my colleague Vinay is handling, and through the reflector we are bouncing back light onto the model's face. So I'd really like to share a tip here that in conditions like this where you use natural resources like the sun to your advantage, you can place the model against the sun, use it as a beautiful hair light, and with a reflector, maybe if you do not have something like this, you could even use a foam core or a thermocol board and reflect light back onto the model's face. Doing so, you can use the sun for a nice hair light and get a very beautiful portrait in this beautiful light. The sun is going down really fast, and I want to make the most of this light. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some more beautiful shots with Himakshi here, and we'll review them with you in the studio. Here we are back in the studio after this amazing outdoor shoot at Jaisalmer. The whole experience of shooting the rising sun, the golden sunsets, shooting on the sand dunes, it was just an amazing experience.
Right, Ron, it was an amazing experience, and I'm pretty sure we have gotten amazing images as well. And it was not just about us getting up early and shooting, it was also about the efforts of stylists who made our models look more glamorous, and not to forget about the art department. The sets what they had put on the sand dunes were like really amazing. Everything put together created such glamorous images.
So Vinay very rightly said, such high fashion glamour shoots at such a large scale are just not one person's job. And our team fared really well, and because of their help, we were able to get some great shots. So Vinay, through this, we have been able to demonstrate for our viewers how an outdoor high fashion shoot can be executed. But Vinay, in the outdoors, light is something that is not under our control, and we have to be at the mercy of nature and different times of the day to get the light that we need. And light is one major element of photography, or actually is the element of photography. Let us take our viewers inside a studio and talk about, lighting setups or lighting styles, which will help them understand lighting indoors to control it better for portraits or for fashion photography, so that they can make the most of this genre.
Yes. Let's get into the studio and we'll try to demonstrate all the different kinds of lighting which we have.
Sure. Yeah. So we've already shot outdoors, and now today we are here in the studio to talk about lighting and doing fashion photography in a more controlled environment. But inside a studio we have the liberty where the light is in our control. Right. So to demonstrate the same, we have the beautiful Pia again with us, and she'll be helping us demonstrate a few lighting styles. So Vinay, why don't you help us understand this in a better way?
Yes, Rohan. In this particular light, we can see we have two LED lights which have been placed in such a way that Pia's face is equally lit from both the sides, and we are not able to see any kind of shadow on her face, and every detail of her face is very clear. And this we call it as flat lighting because it is flat. Okay, Ron, let's take a picture and check it out how it looks.
Sure, Pia, if I could just ask you to move a little bit towards the light and then face back towards the camera.
Yeah.
Okay. So this gives a nice posture and a nice, curve to the body and makes the model look more beautiful.
Right. So Ron, this is a picture which we just got.
Yeah, it's very nice, equally lit. And this completely demonstrates how flat lighting actually produces an image.
Right.
So let's talk about our next style of lighting called broad lighting.
Right. We'll do one thing, Rohan. We'll just switch off this particular light and we'll have this light to be on. Can we have the light, please? Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. So I think where Pia is sitting right now is actually by just switching on this light, we've created broad light.
That's right. So you can see 80% of her face has been lit and 20% is towards the shadow.
Yes, and when would you use such kind of a light?
When we have a thin, lean model or something, when we want to create a little bit of weight on her face.
Okay, so people with narrow faces or slim people, and if you want to, just make them look a little bit chubbier, that is when you can use broad lighting.
Right.
Okay, great. Can we just take a picture?
Sure.
Yeah, if I could just have you move slightly into the, yeah, just there. Okay. Little back towards me. Yeah. So when I'm taking it one step forward from broad lighting, I think short lighting is just the opposite of broad lighting.
Right, right.
So to demonstrate that, I think we should again shut off this light and turn that light back on. Yeah, can we have you move back, face towards the light? So like we saw in broad lighting that the 80% of the face was lit and 20% was in shadow. And the brightly lit side of the face was facing towards the camera. So in short lighting, since it's absolutely the opposite, so the lit side, the 80% of the lit side of the face is facing away from the camera, and the shadow side of the face is pointing towards the camera. Correct? So this kind of lighting setup, I think we should use, since it's just the opposite, for people who are chubby and making them look slimmer.
Right.
Right? Great. Why don't we take a picture?
Okay. So this is the picture which we have got.
Very
wow,
nice.
very nice. Yeah.
So Vinay, if we'd like to give a little artistic or a classic look to our pictures, we can use Rembrandt style of lighting.
Right. Yeah.
Now Rembrandt, as the artist, he used this style of lighting in his portraits while he used to paint. So in this style of lighting, basically what happens is the light, as you can see in the setup, is placed at a slightly elevated and placed at a 45-degree angle from our subject. And the way the light falls on the subject's face, the shadow from the nose, kind of extends up to the upper lip and forms a triangle of light under the eye.
That looks very beautiful.
Which kind of makes our subject or our model look more beautiful.
Right.
So that is the Rembrandt style of lighting, and we can use it to bring out, beauty, character, and make the images look a little warm.
Correct.
Yeah. So why don't we take a picture for a review?
Okay. This is a perfect lighting for Rembrandt. And Rohan, if you just check this out, in this particular picture, this shadow side of the face, the eye on the shadow side of the face is getting a catch light. And that is also one of the a very important thing when we are doing a Rembrandt.
Okay, so this is one important tip, like Vinay shared, we have to keep that in mind, that the eye on the shadow side should get a little bit of a catch light. That makes the image more engaging. So Vinay, let's talk about our final lighting setup for this session, which is butterfly lighting. So just to set up for that, why don't we switch off this light and switch on this light behind you. So Vinay, for our viewers, why don't you explain the setup?
Sure, Ron. If you can see this, we have the model, the camera, as well as the light. Everything is in the same line. And by what we have done for the light, we have just raised it up so that we get a nose shadow a little bit down. So by doing this, it forms a butterfly shape. And this is a very beautiful light which is used to, you can call it as a beauty light also, to bring out the beauty of the model.
Okay, so yes, I can see that, by raising the light up and pointing it down, there's a very fine shadow on the upper lip that is being formed by the nose. So this shadow is probably referred to as butterfly lighting.
Very right.
I think Vinay, this kind of lighting can be used to bring out, like you said, beauty, glamour, or can also be used for some, elderly people to make them look more glamorous or more young or more vibrant. So why don't we take a picture for our review?
Sure. Okay. So here you go. We have this picture. It looks beautiful.
Beautiful lighting. Right. Yes, this kind of lighting just accentuates the, the features, brings out the skin and makes the, whomever you're shooting, either it's your model or family member or someone, more glamorous and looks very nice. So thanks, Pia, for helping us demonstrate all these lighting styles. For our viewers, I'd like to say that you must have noticed that we've used just one light during this whole exercise of, different lighting styles. Why we've done that is because, our psyche, our human eyes, we as humans are used to only one light source, which is the sun. So most of the pictures that we like or, instantly like when we see them is majorly lit by one light source. So by using just one light source, you can do so many styles by just placing your model or your light source in a certain direction and get different effects in your images. So I hope this session is very helpful for you, and you will try all these lighting styles in studio or by using different modes or types of light for lighting your portraits. So Vinay, since we've completed both our outdoor and indoor shoots, why don't we go ahead and review some images?
Sure.
So let's look at a few images from our outdoor shoot. You know, here in our outdoor shoot, our main motive was to showcase high fashion. You know, costumes, models, the styling, you know, the makeup, all against the, you know, this beautiful environment, the sand dunes, in different lighting conditions, early mornings, late, you know, during sunsets. So we were able to get some really nice images against this backdrop and, you know, tell our viewers how a high fashion shoot can be executed on an outdoor location.
Rightly said, Rohan. We had an amazing shoot outdoor, and yes, indoor is also very important, because in indoor we spoke about a lot of different kinds of lighting, whether it is Rembrandt or split lighting or even the butterfly lighting, the beautiful light. And this goes to all our viewers who are like trying to experiment or try to want to pursue fashion photography or portrait photography, and lighting is the most important.
Yes, lighting does play a major role in all sorts of photography actually. Yeah. So Vinay, I think we were able to share some helpful tips for our viewers and for aspiring portrait or fashion photographers. That is all from this session, and we'll be back with more interesting sessions. Until then, these are your Nikon buddies, Rohan and Vinay, signing off.